creator of Reality Check here on WURD. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the Tuesday edition. Good Tuesday morning. Good midday to you. Hello to everyone watching us on WURD TV on youtube.com/onWURD and also facebook.com/4WURD as well. You can catch me on twitter.com if you'd like, at Ellison Report. If you happen to venture onto Twitter, go to twitter.com. I'm at Ellison Report. That's where you tag me, or hashtag Reality Check, hashtag Word on Politics. We're continuing with hashtag Word on Politics. And don't forget to subscribe to our companion magazine to this program. Our companion magazine for Reality Check, WURD, is the B Note, THEBE Note.com. Subscribe today and get some of your needed or essential insights into the world of public affairs. This is your daily dose of politics, public policy, public affairs here on WURD. Joining us actually at the top of this 10 o'clock hour is Harvey Rice. Harvey Rice back with his executive director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. Go to picapa.org. That's PICAPA.org for more information. Also, to get some insights into the financial health of the city of Philadelphia. Harvey Rice back here on Reality Check to talk a bit more about that with us this morning. Harvey, how are you doing?
Good morning. Good morning, Charles. How are you?
All right, good.
Thank you for having me on your program.
All right, excellent. We have you on Skype, so it's good. We can hear you even more clearly. So thanks for coming back. It's my understanding that tax collections or tax revenue during the month of October dropped some for the city of Philadelphia. Obviously, the city's still in the midst of pandemic. Also, the city probably, I don't know, but maybe you can kind of expound on this. Maybe the city putting in a little bit of extra resources as far as this election is concerned, from just support for everything from polling locations to the city commissioner's office to also security around the city, because we were in a rather tense, rather volatile time as far as that election was concerned. So a number of things that the city has to spend on. Talk about that. What is the city's financial position right now? How severe is it as we look at October and then we head into November?
Well, what we've seen in October, when we compare the revenue collections for 2020 to 2019, the month of October, we were down a little over $45 million for the month of October. And then if you look at the revenue collections, that was about 17%. And if you look at the revenue collections for the entire fiscal year from beginning July, so July, August, September, and October, we're down about little over $84 million for those 4 months, and around a little over 9%. So what it shows us is that it seemed like when we got to October, it was even more significant. When you have 45 million in 1 month and you only have 84 million loss in 4 months, October was significant in driving those loss of revenues up. Mm-hmm. So we're concerned about that, and as you know, Charles, we look at this every month, and we're tracking it. There are some good signs, that when you look at the projections that the city said that they would their revenue collections for fiscal 21, some are doing far better than even the projections. The business income receipts tax, the real estate tax is doing far better. And then some areas such as wages, the loss has been, they projected a 5% loss, and it's about 10%. But it's not as significant as it could have been. The realty transfer tax is off a little bit, and that's understandable during this pandemic. While we saw in the beginning of the pandemic, the real estate transfer tax was still doing well, and then I think as soon as we got in the middle of the pandemic, people then weren't putting houses up for sale. And buyers weren't ready to buy right now during this pandemic because of the uncertainty. So as we see, this pandemic is having an effect on city revenues. And I think with the announcement yesterday for the next 6 weeks, the closing of, and we're getting into the holiday season, which is the biggest shopping season of the year, that generates wage taxes and sales taxes and parking taxes. With those new restrictions, we're probably going to see significant decreases, especially in sales, parking, and probably and most likely wage taxes.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the pandemic obviously is causing a rather tenuous and uncertain financial situation in the city of Philadelphia. Are there other factors as well, or are there other expenses?
Well,
either pandemic related or maybe indirectly related to the pandemic or outside of the pandemic. For example, I wonder about, like I was just saying, you know, was there a cost as far as the elections, a lot of the activity around the elections? That's one. I do wonder about the city's very troubling, very alarming homicide rate and gun violence rate. I mean, there's got to be some sort of economic or social cost that comes along with that. I wonder about some other factors as well. Are there other factors, other variables?
There are other factors. You have, I mean, and there's some good and there's some not so good. You have, we've seen overtime decrease, and I think that's a result of mostly the pandemic. So that's been helpful. But then we've seen other services increase because of the pandemic. Whether it's, you know, the police and the fire are increasing their costs. And as you said on the top of the this interview, the election and the cost of the election and the overtime that was and the added person hours as well as the added employees to which I think run this election safely and securely, and I think they did a phenomenal job. There's city workers from other departments stepped up and came over to the County Board of Elections and assisted them with the election, the mail-in ballots and all aspects of the election to make it run smoothly. But there's a cost to that. One good thing was that I understand that the commissioners received a $12 or $13 million grant from an outside nonprofit to assist them to modernize and so that they, you know, and they can put security measures into their system. But yes, there is going to be a cost to that. But when we look at, we also monitor the city's spending every month during this pandemic, and we'll be releasing our budget, what they call a budget obligations report for October, some later today. And what we're seeing, while they're a little bit above where they should be, it's very insignificant. They should be around 33% of their spending. They're about 34%. But you have to put the caveat in that they spend a lot in the beginning because what they're encumbering that money for contracts because contracts start generally at the beginning of the fiscal year. So, but we watch that every month to make sure that they're going to stay within line of their spending, because if not, and the revenues are decreasing, then we're going to have to step into the city and say, you got to send us another revised plan because this plan is now not in compliance. So that's why we're doing this almost, well, definitely every month and almost weekly. We're looking at their spending as well as their revenue collection.
Can you sort of describe for us, Harvey, what lack of compliance or non-compliance would look like? What are the penalties if the city is in non-compliance or if the city refuses to recalibrate its fiscal strategy?
Well, what the process, what will happen is we will alert the city saying, we've taken a look, you're not in compliance with the plan that you submitted and the board approved back in the summer, and therefore you have to resubmit to us a revised plan to show us how you're going to spend within your means, with the revenues coming in, and what you're going to do to keep this plan in compliance. And then they will submit that to us, and then we'll review and analyze it, and the board then will have to vote on that, whether to accept or not accept that revised plan. If the board decides that they haven't given a plan, or we decide, or through our review and analysis, and the board accepts that they haven't given a plan that's in compliance, that there's, because we can't have them run into a deficit, then the board will reject it and send it back to them, and we will tell them why they're not in compliance, and then they have another opportunity to come back to us to make it into compliance. If they fail to do that, and it's never happened since PIKE has been in existence, but if they fail to do that, then certain state money could stop coming to the city of Philadelphia. There's a lot of exceptions to that, but but that has never happened as of yet.
That hasn't happened as of yet. Okay, got it. We're talking with Harvey Rice, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. You should learn about what they do, who they are, how relevant they are to the city's finances, the city's economic or the city's fiscal outlook, the city government's fiscal outlook. PICA, PICAPA.org, PICAPA.org. Harvey, is the fiscal position of the city of Philadelphia similar to what you're seeing in other cities across the country?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Not only cities, but even state governments. Are dealing with, as you can see, I think Pennsylvania has a $5 billion hole in their revenues. So
are other cities dealing with this better than Philadelphia is dealing with, or comparing? I mean, are you comparing the cities and saying, hey, Philly, you know what, maybe you could steal a few ideas from another city. Maybe you could replicate what someone is doing over here in this particular state?
Well, actually, what I've seen the opposite. I think other cities are stealing ideas from Philadelphia and from PICA, in the sense of the monitoring that we have over the city budget, and and I think we are a great vehicle to keep the city within their budget, and I think the city has been doing that. Other than the overtime prior to the pandemic, the city has been really trying to live within their means, as well as try to address all these social problems, such as being the high poverty rate and the violence that has been happening, the gun violence in the city, and how the city is trying to address these problems with funding as well as other measures, and but still live within their means.
Let me ask you, Harvey, what would you recommend the city do, anything outside of what the city is already doing in terms of how they should respond to this fiscal crisis? Also, you just mentioned poverty, about like the city needing to address and tackle the issue of poverty. Economic distress was already a prominent feature in Philadelphia life before the pandemic, right? So I have been hearing a lot of conversation about things, not just in Philadelphia, but also in other cities, about using tools or mechanisms like social impact bonds. So the city regularly asks voters to approve bonds, multi-million-dollar bonds, for municipal building upgrades or municipal service upgrades. Why not something like, for example, a $600 million social impact bond to directly attack or tackle that poverty? I'm noticing some other cities talking about that as well. There's been a lot of conversation inside Philadelphia. Would that be something that you would explore, or something that you would recommend the city do to improve its financial situation or its economic situation?
Right. I think immediately what the city should do is the programs that they have out there, to make sure they're getting their bang for the buck, to really monitor the spending of those programs, that it's going to the mission of the programs, and track the results. And if they're working, let's keep them. If they're not working, then don't put more money into it. And then as PICA, we could explore what the social impact bonds. I don't know if I would do it until after we get through this pandemic. But I think that's something to look at, because I believe that if you get a grip on this poverty, and I believe that's the mayor's contention and program, that we can really set Philadelphia onto a good fiscal health going forward.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Harvey Rice, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, PICA, PA.org. The authority, the organization, quasi-government organization providing financial oversight of the city of Philadelphia. Every now and then Harvey checks in with us, gives us an overview of where the city's finances are. Always appreciate your presence on the program, Harvey.
I appreciate
it.
Yeah,
we need this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk with you again.
Okay.
So definitely a lot to think about and a lot to be concerned about if you are especially a resident of Philadelphia and also a resident of the state of Pennsylvania. You definitely want Philadelphia to work. You don't want Philadelphia to be in a bad or volatile financial situation. And but Philadelphia dealing with a set of challenges that is not peculiar in this time, in this pandemic time. So we'll keep a close eye on it here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to talk with Denitra Sherman, campaigns director for the American Civil Liberties Union of Pennsylvania. So I think we're scheduled to talk with Denitra, talking with the ACLU of Pennsylvania, and we're going to talk about police reform, police violence, and the need to reform agencies like the Philadelphia Police Department, particularly in the wake of recent tragedies. So let's take a break, and then when we come back on the other side, we'll be here on Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Did you know millennials make up the largest share of the U.S. population? They are known for being tech-savvy, practicing mindfulness, and being socially and ethically conscious. But they are also on track to be in worse health than previous generations. Pitch your best ideas, Philly. You have the power to help shape how we address millennial health and mental health challenges in our beloved city. We'll connect you with our mentors and get you ready for a pitch competition with our judges. Visit economyleague.org/wellcity.
At PICO, we know one thing is certain. Times have changed. From kitchen classrooms to couch conference calls, searching for a new job, or new ways to keep your family connected. These changes have become a part of our reality. That's why our teams are working 24/7 to meet the needs of our communities. So no matter how much things change, you can depend on PICO to be there with the energy and help you need to power through. Learn more at pico.com.
What's up, Philly? It's Sincerely Sarita. The school year is underway, but never before has that experience come in so many shapes and sizes. Is the education of your child being left to a smattering of clumsy in-person and virtual instruction? The COVID-19 crisis has created a market for untested virtual teaching models lacking true credibility. Maybe it's time to reconsider and exercise your choice. Maybe it's time to check out Commonwealth Charter Academy. Here are the benefits to your family. 1, an online education provided at no cost to you, complete with laptop, headset, and help with internet access. 2, partnership with the market leader in cyber education with a nearly 20-year track record of world-class learning. And 3, delivery of a safe, reliable, and comfortable education experience over the internet directly to the confines of your living room. Visit ccaeducate.me today and discover the gold standard of cyber education. That's ccaeducate.me.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." For all young people to succeed in Philadelphia public schools, they need adequate resources and materials. But not all students have the same access and opportunities they deserve. As Philadelphia public schools continue to operate with remote learning, we at WURD Radio want to do our part to help students have the resources they need to be successful. Please join us and our community partners, Global Citizen and the Cayuga Elementary School, by donating supplies online so students have the same supplies we would want for our own children. Go to globalcitizen365.org to make an online contribution of supplies.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com, WURD TV, WURD app. Waiting on our next guest. I think she will be with us shortly. That is Denitra Sherman, Campaigns Director for ACLU PA. There are a number of new COVID-19 related restrictions that have been put in place throughout the nation and especially in the city of Philadelphia. Philadelphia Department of Public Health announcing today over 2,500 additional confirmed cases of COVID-19 novel coronavirus throughout the city of Philadelphia. So the number of confirmed cases in the city of Philadelphia is nearly 55,000. There are also 15 new probable cases from rapid antigen tests, and the case count represents totals for 3 days or over the past 3 or 4 days since new cases were last reported last Friday, November 13th. Also, an additional 8 fatalities in Philadelphia as a result of COVID-19 infections. The number of residents who have succumbed to the virus in Philadelphia is now at, it's over 1,900 people have died in Philadelphia as a result of coronavirus, and 48% of those were long-term care facilities. So Philadelphia has announced safer at home restrictions. They begin Friday, November 20th, and will remain in place through January 1st, 2021. There's an extension of these restrictions that could possibly happen at some point beyond the January 1st date. It all depends on how well we follow these new guidelines, follow these instructions, and get through the current surge, the current wave, what people are describing as the second wave of COVID-19 infections. So all indoor gatherings and events involving people from more than one household are prohibited. Once again, all indoor gatherings and events involving people from more than one household are prohibited. And this is in either public or private spaces. This includes private events such as weddings and showers, things listed as celebrations in previous guidance, as well as funerals. Religious institutions are permitted to have people indoors, but it must be capped at a 5% of maximum occupancy. So only 5% of congregants can show up in churches. Outdoor gatherings and events are limited to 10% of maximum capacity of the space. So only 10% capacity for any outdoor gatherings as well. The following businesses and activities will not be allowed. All high schools and colleges must move to online instruction only, with the exception of clinical instruction for students in health sciences. Indoor dining at restaurants and other food service businesses. So restaurants can continue takeout. So restaurants, you want to up your takeout game. Outdoor dining will also continue. There are additional restrictions on outdoor dining, however. Theaters, movie theaters, other performance spaces are closed. Bowling alleys, arcades, game spaces, closed. Museums, closed. Libraries, closed, with the exception of those serving as access centers. They can continue to operate, and there's also curbside drop-off and pickup services for patrons. Casinos obviously closed. Recreational activities and sports for youth, community groups, and schools, nope. Gyms and indoor exercise classes, no, not indoor, but exercise groups and classes may continue outdoors. Senior day services are not permitted. Senior centers and adult care centers, those all remain closed. Restaurants offering outdoor dining must reduce table sizes to 4 people. Do not bring more than 4 people, including yourself, if you're planning on dining outdoors. Guidance will make it clear that groups dining outdoors should be household members only. So just bring your house, because mixing different households promotes community-wide spread. Retail stores and indoor malls probably may continue to operate, but with a maximum density of 5 people per 1,000 square feet, so 5% capacity in malls and retail stores. The city will require these stores to enforce mask use and distancing of customers and staff. So when you go to a store, please don't forget your mask. Offices are permitted to have only employees that cannot work remotely. Barbershops, beauty salons, and similar personal services may continue to operate, but all staff and customers must wear masks at all times. These businesses cannot work on the face or otherwise perform services that require that masks be removed. College sports may continue if their plan is specifically approved by the City Department of Health, and no spectators can go. No spectators are present for college sports events. Zoos may operate only their outdoor areas. Parks, trails, playgrounds, and other athletic fields will remain open for individual use only, no group sports. So I think there's a restriction on facial work at hair salons as well. No facial work at hair salons. The following businesses and activities can continue to function under current guidance from the city's Department of Health: grocery stores and farmers markets, pharmacies, banks, construction, landscaping, home-based construction, renovation, repair, and maintenance, manufacturing and warehousing, real estate operations and transactions, healthcare services, home-based support services such as home health services, taxis and rideshare services, transit, mass transit, outdoor mobile food carts and trucks, hotels, drive-in events in which people remain in their vehicles, child daycare and early learning centers, elementary and middle schools, access centers for children in elementary and middle school. Businesses with any questions, if you own a business and you have questions about compliance with these new safer at home restrictions, contact the City Department of Commerce's Office of Business Services at 215-683-2100 or business@phila.gov. This is real important here too. And, you know, I know, you know, there's some folks in the community who don't like to get into the habit of snitching, but in a moment like this where lives are at stake, if you see a business or you know of a business that's not operating responsibly, that's not operating safely, is not complying with these restrictions, snitch on them, like call them out. So report a business or other institution that is not following these new COVID-19 restrictions. You can just simply call 311 or go to Philly's 311 website, and you know, you can go to, I think that's phila.gov/311. Please report if there are businesses out there that are not following these guidelines, if they're not mandating or maintaining things like requiring customers to wear their mask when they come inside their store. Call them out, report them immediately. Everyone has to follow these guidelines. And so we can't, as a city, we can't, as a community and a country, be constantly afraid of this new coronavirus surge, constantly complain about the pressures that it's placing on every aspect of society, but we're not ourselves following these instructions, and we're not putting pressure on our community peers to follow these instructions. People are getting sick. They're getting really, I mean, you know, some people get mildly sick, but there are a lot of people who get sick in a very major way, and there are also a lot of people who are dying. It is just completely, it's just completely disrespectful, particularly to the memory of the people, the now 250,000 people that we know of who have died from coronavirus. It is just completely disrespectful that people are walking around, going to public spaces and not wearing their masks. It's just complete disrespect. It's complete disrespect to, you know, our people who are now transitioned, who are now ancestors. We've had many of our very closest family members and elders who have transitioned as a result of the irresponsibility, the malevolence, the government malfeasance that's been displayed as a result that has caused this pandemic. And for people still out there who are just like going into multiple spaces, not wearing masks, not being careful, not maintaining social distance. I'm watching on Instagram. I was watching with my wife over the past few days. I've been watching videos or clips from, I think, what's her name? Everyone else outside of Philly really appreciates some of the work that she does in North Philly, trying to take care of the community. And if anything, God forbid, happens to her, there are going to be a lot of people, a lot of folks in places like North Philly who are going to lose out. I think her name is Saud, who runs that restaurant in North Philly, and she has it. She has COVID, and she already had a pre-existing condition. And God bless her. She doesn't have to do this, but she's been doing almost near daily video clips of her dealing with or struggling through the sickness, and it's just she doesn't look good, and she sounds bad. And she's doing this as a warning to people in the community to please follow instructions, to mask up. I appreciate her doing that. And I appreciate other folks who do. She doesn't have to do that. She really should just kind of rest and recover. But she's in a really bad state. And it's just really heartbreaking to watch. It's really heartbreaking to watch, and it's really heartbreaking also to talk with other family members and friends who are either who have dealt with it, or who are dealing with it, or dealing with their own family and friends, dealing with this this really terrible virus, this terrible pandemic. We will get on the other side of it at some point, but we can get to the other side of it a lot faster if people just follow instructions and don't meet in large groups. I'm still talking to people who are planning on expanding their family size during Thanksgiving, and kind of paraphrasing Red Fox here, y'all all gonna feel like damn fools in Thanksgiving 2021, when some of you not going to be there because you couldn't be responsible, you couldn't help yourselves, you couldn't resist the temptation of meeting in Thanksgiving in 2020. There's going to be a lot of folks feeling really foolish in 2021 because you just couldn't control yourselves in 2020. I don't know how else to phrase that or say that. It's just going to be anyone out there, whether it's in Philadelphia or we have listeners around the nation who are listening in, because this is very troubling. I mean, we have a large plurality of Americans who are planning on meeting. I mean, we could have even more, because you even have prominent public figures and public officials, elected officials, who are irresponsibly telling folks that they're meeting as a large family, or they're doing the usual normal Thanksgiving thing, and it might be triggering, or it might be encouraging other people to do the exact same irresponsible thing. And if anyone has already made plans to have more than immediate family in their household for Thanksgiving, please, I beg you, please cancel those plans. Hurt other people's feelings for a year. They'll get over it, because everybody will come out on the other side in 2021, perhaps 2022. I mean, it's looking like 2022 now, because people don't want to follow instructions. And so, and what's really also problematic is that, okay, so there's a lot of folks out there who want to wait a while before they take the vaccines that we're expecting. At some point over the horizon, we could start seeing vaccines distributed, especially the first responders and other emergency personnel first, by the end of this year. So, and it's going to take a while before it goes out to the general population. But even if it goes out to the general population, or even though or even when it gets to that last phase, when it's distributed to the general population, there are a lot of folks out there who don't trust it, who don't trust the vaccine yet, because they want various pharmaceuticals to work out the glitches, et cetera. They don't want to be the demographic that ends up being the guinea pig. People are afraid of, Tuskegee experiment part 2. Okay, I understand that. But, if you are one of those people who's complaining about, or, griping about that you don't want to partake in the vaccine at any point in the near or distant future, okay, well then that's fine. Well, then follow instructions. Then do the simple things like wear your mask, maintain social distancing, don't be around people for a while until society as a whole gets through this day, because I'm hearing people, I'm having conversations with people. People are contradicting themselves. Well, I don't want to take that vaccine. I don't want, and I understand. I get where that comes from. I understand the history behind that. Well, I don't want to take that vaccine. I don't want to be a guinea pig. Okay, well that's fine. You don't want to be a guinea pig, but that's okay. But don't set up a situation where you're endangering other people's lives because you're not acting you're not acting responsibly, and you're not following basic public health guidelines. So it's a contradiction to say on one hand, I don't want to take the vaccine at any point in the future, but on the other hand, you're just, doing whatever you want and operating in a sort of pre-pandemic normal fashion. It's a contradiction. Like, so, if you've made a decision not to participate in having vaccine, and taking vaccine at some point in the near distant future, okay, I understand where some of that sentiment comes from. Although we're going to need vaccine, we're going to need immunization as a basic public health layer. Don't endanger other people then, and then follow all the basic guidelines to keep yourself from getting it in the first place. I mean, until the whole society, the whole planet gets on the other side of this current pandemic apocalypse. That's all I'm saying. Let's go ahead. We didn't get our guest, so we're just going to take a break. And then when we come back on the other side, we'll just open up the phone lines. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065. Toll free, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
What's up, everyone? I know you know the word. No, not the station, but this word. J-O-B, that is. And our friends at Amoroso's Baking Company are hiring right now. Amoroso's has been baking the delicious bread in our community for over 100 years, and they want you to join their team today. The old and the young love Amoroso's, and they are hiring right now. Check it out. They offer fair pay and provide health, dental, and prescription plans after 90 days employment. Call 856-754-0355 or visit amorososbaking.com for details.
In Pennsylvania, it's now illegal to sell tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, vapes, or electronic cigarettes to anyone under 21. Stores can get fined up to $1,000 for selling tobacco to someone who is underage. Know the law. Check IDs. Post your retailer license. Make sure only employees have access to tobacco products, and only sell tobacco products to customers aged 21 and older. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Monday through Thursday, keep it locked to WURD Radio. At 6 a.m., start your day with the Power Hour, hosted by Bishop Dwayne Royster and Reverend Mark Kelly Tyler. At 7, it's Wake Up with WURD with Solomon Jones. At 10 a.m., it's Reality Check with Charles Ellison. Then at 1 p.m., it's The Source, hosted by Andrea Lawful Sanders on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, and the Black Women's Leadership Council on Wednesdays. At 4 p.m., it's Evening Words with Nick Taliaferro. Then at 7, it's Save Space with Sincerely Sarita. At 9 p.m., round up your day with Keeping It Real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Keep your dial locked to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WURDradio.com and the WURD Radio app. Or watch live on WURD TV via Facebook and YouTube. WURD Radio. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900, 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We have Malcolm White watching and listening from Westmount area, watching WURD TV on our Facebook live stream, facebook.com/4WURD. Good morning to you, Malcolm White. And Norma Williams, just checked my provisional ballot again. No showings. Okay, Norma Williams. Is that in Pennsylvania? And so for more information on that, to check that, either go to PhiladelphiaVotes.com for the, if you had voted within the city of Philadelphia, excuse me, or VotesPA.com if you're not in the city of Philadelphia, you happen to be in some other county. But just go to start, those are two good places to start, either VotesPA.com, which is the statewide elections administration operation, or the city commissioner's office. Nasir Butler, good morning, Charles, and I guess you would mean Troy. Jordan said, but he's also saying good morning to Jordan. Peace and blessings. So Sakina is listening in and is asking, is 311, the city's 311 operation, really following up on calls? I know personally of a church on 58th and Chestnut that was reported several times, and there were no changes made. They were jam-packed in the beginning and continue to be, hosting multiple services throughout the week. Neighbors call it a club. What church is on 58th and Chestnut? That's interesting. Who knows what the church is on 58th and Chestnut in Philadelphia? Because if that's the case, then I'm not sure what church that is. I'm looking for that. That's interesting. I hope it's not Emmanuel AME. Emmanuel AME on 5917 Chestnut, which is close by 58th and Chestnut. So, so anybody who knows what church that person is speaking of on 58th and Chestnut, call us and tell us the name. And if you're saying something like that, and then we'll no, I mean, this is the you know, yeah, I mean, snitches will just have to get stitches, right? Like, you know, it's irresponsible. Any church doing that, like, join a new church. You know, any church that is congregating during a life-threatening pandemic, first, you know, instruction number one, join another church, like, leave that church. Two, that's like one of the most unchristian, like, anti-Jesus things that you could do. So, like, already, like, whatever clergy or whatever pastor is allowing that to happen is not a man or woman of God at all. So you know, that just in a very very big way that just sort of flies in the face of, like, every biblical principle. And the key biblical principle is to you know, protect your community, protect your neighbors. And so, like, I don't understand that. I don't understand why people feel the need to meet in large, to be in large gatherings like this and to endanger everyone. So especially churches, that's the last institution that you would think would be engaged in that kind of activity. So if anyone knows what church the listener Sakina is talking about on 58th and Chestnut, call us, let us know. Seriously, let us know. We'll put it out there. We'll put it on blast, because that's a super spreader event if that's actually happening on 58th and Chestnut. And if that church happens to be listening in right now, can you please cut it out? Can you stop? But we're going to put out a what is it, like the APB? Like, what is the church on 58th and Chestnut in Philadelphia that is holding super spreader events on a frequent basis? And being very anti-Christian, very anti-Jesus right now. So we're just putting that out there. Let me go to Calvin out of Delaware, who's calling in for a reality check. Calvin?
Morning, Charles.
Hey, good morning.
How you doing?
All right. I could be better.
Okay, yeah, I understand, man. I understand. You know, I was reading about, you know, President-elect Biden, once he gets in office, he wants to implement mask mandates. And so far, like, 16 of the Republican governors are pushing back on that.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking at it as saying it's like a personal responsibility. But, you know, this whole thing is like politicization with these masks. I mean, you got like 60% of the country who favor wearing masks and 40% of the country who doesn't, you know. So this is really going to be interesting because, you know, a lot of these Republican governors are saying it's a personal responsibility, but by the same token, you know, you have people walking around who, you know, like you're saying, I mean, you know, not wearing a mask and attending these events where it's a lot of people, it's going to be like super spreaders.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really going to be an uphill battle for him to do that. You know, I mean, it's certainly something that's going to be much needed, you know. I know they're saying with the vaccines that they have out now, you know, the two, like they're saying that the first people to get the vaccines will be the first responders, the healthcare workers, and I think after that it would be the elderly. But it's really going to be an uphill battle in terms of, and some people have this mindset, the fact that, they figure it's like it infringes on their freedom, but they're not in a situation where other people can get sick because you want to just walk around and, la-di-da, like everything's okay. Yeah. And that's not the case, so it's really, it's going to be interesting going forward how this plays out.
Yeah, it really is. What's your take? I mean, as far as like vaccine distribution, I was just doing some informal polling here, Calvin. Is that something that you would wait on? I mean, how enthusiastic are you about personally or your family taking a vaccine?
I would take it personally because I mean they're saying like 94.5 effective rates. I mean that's pretty good. Right. At this point I would take it.
Okay. Okay. Do you worry about there's been a lack of diversity in the vaccine trials? They've been unable to find as many non-white people to participate in vaccine trials, and for a variety of reasons. I mean, one of those reasons being that there's a lot of reluctance on the part of especially folks within black populations to participate in vaccine trials because of the history there. Right. So do you worry about that? Do you have any concerns about that? That hey, you know what? Because I mean we're all like one human race, but there are different types of for example, conditions, medical conditions that demographic groups have. Some medical conditions or some medical or physiological features we share and others we don't, according to whatever our demographic group or according to where we're from or whatever our genetics. So do you worry about that?
Well, I mean, me personally, I'm 70 years old, so I would take it. But I understand the history. I mean, you look at it in terms of what's happened in the past and all that. But at this point in my life, I personally would take it. But it's just that I just think going forward, you got these people out here, this divisiveness, people who don't want to take it. They're going to be super spreaders, and that's going to still keep these numbers up, So, but that's just
we got to do something about that. No, I appreciate you saying that too. At some point, people are going to have to, and they're going to have to encourage their young people to participate in mass immunizations. I mean, if we're going to get through this, if we're going to stop it. So, and we're going to have to put some trust. Obviously, there's going to have to be a lot of collaboration. I mean, I think the pharmaceutical companies, the government, state, local, federal, should collaborate with trusted, in the case of our community, trusted black medical researchers, black medical advocates, black medical practitioners and doctors who put their stamp of approval on it, so to speak, right? So I think that outreach campaign should be substantial. There should be a lot of investment in that outreach campaign to ensure that I'm not seeing that level of investment. So as a result, I appreciate what you were just saying, Calvin, because I agree with you. Like at some point we all have to take it. But, there's still a lot of reluctance on the part of many people in the community with respect to this vaccine. I'm seeing it. I'm hearing it. I'm having conversations with folks. I hear it on this radio station. I see it on social media. Yeah, a lot of black folks are like, I don't want to take it. I don't want to be the first one. Don't make us become the first people to take this. And so I understand where that comes from. But then, okay, well, like, when do we get through it? When does it stop? And the same black folks who are saying, I'm watching them on social media, for example, the same black folks who are saying, I don't want to be the first to take this vaccine, are also the same black folks who are going out there and they're going to like large public gatherings and they're bragging about it on social media. It's like, well, you're like one of the reasons why this thing won't stop. But you don't want to take the vaccine. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's just absolutely crazy. Yeah.
Thanks for the time.
Hey, thank you, Calvin. Thanks as always for calling in. We got a few more moments. 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Sandra out of Oak Lane is calling for a reality check. Miss Sandra?
Hi, Miss Charles. How are you?
How are you doing? All right.
Good. Listen, you said a buzzword, genetics. I'm sure you're aware that there's been a genome study for the last maybe 30, 25 years through the government, pharmaceuticals, military, etc., and that the 23andMe, which is a DNA kit commercial company, they have been sharing the data with some of these scientists as it goes to a COVID cure, and they are able to zoom in via the genome who's more susceptible to the COVID. And you're right, this does not include a lot of blacks, people of color.
Right.
And that's some concern that I have, because the genome, I think you should have permission to use that data, and people should be compensated if you're going to use their genome information.
Yeah, I think so. And, I know that there have been it's something I need to explore a little bit more. There have been a few black state legislators, this is why you had to pay attention to what's happening in your state capitals as well, who've been introducing legislation in their respective states about the sharing of that data. There obviously there's some privacy concerns there. There are concerns about like how that data is used or not used. And that's just a general problem in medical research, kind of going back to your original point, Ms. Sandra. There is a lack of black expertise and black or inclusion of black thought leadership, black research thought leadership in this field. And we had someone, I think we need to bring him back on, Kevin Ahmad Jenkins over at Penn. He was saying, we need more black medical researchers, not black medical doctors, but black medical researchers, people who want to get into the medical and science research space. We don't have, there's a huge dearth of that, and it's at alarming levels. So that creates situations like these.
Yes, because the American Medical Association doesn't want to get into the racial politics of dispensing medication. So you have medication that is given to blacks for high blood pressure, but their test pool for the particular drugs are done on white male.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when you're diagnosed with hypertension, then the first medication doesn't work. Keep taking it for 2 weeks. If it doesn't work, we'll put you on something else. Because the doctors, if they don't know certain hypertensives work better with the black population, then you're still going to be the guinea pig.
That's true.
And in the future, the genome technology way of trying to heal or help people with diseases is going to be done individually. It's not going to be this one pill fits everybody.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we have to think about. So absolutely, no, it's food for thought. So we'll try to bring those discussions or put some more light on it when we can and where we can. Ms. Sandra, I have to let you go because I got to go to break here. But thank you for that. Thank you for those comments. Let me take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to bring on our regular contributors here on Reality Check, Stefan Hankin and Justin Wallen. We're going to have a conversation about polling. There's been a lot of questions about polling, and the impression is that the polling industry in this 2020 election cycle failed. It failed immensely in projecting exactly what the outcome would be in the presidential race. They had this sort of basic outcome right, which is Joe Biden did win the presidency, but definitely it didn't bode well for Democrats in the House and the Senate and also in the state legislatures. But anyway, Stefan Hankin, Justin Wallen, two pollsters joining us. We're going to have an extended conversation in this upcoming 11 o'clock hour about polling and what that means for the future of political campaigns, the future of politics. Here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Millennials are known for many things, but did you know that they are currently on track to have worse mental and physical health than the generations that came before them? The Economy League of Greater Philadelphia is challenging our communities to change that with the Well City Challenge. This community-led competition puts the power in your hands to help shape how we address major health challenges across our region, with an emphasis on inclusion and collaboration. So if you care about the health of your community, bring them innovative ideas they need to turn this challenge into opportunities for the millennial generation. Visit economyleague.org to apply today for a chance to compete for $100,000 in prizes and investments. The Well City Challenge is presented by Independence Blue Cross.
WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. This is WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're now in the 11 o'clock hour here on WURD. It's the home of Black Talk Media in Pennsylvania, Philly beyond. In Philly proper, it's 96.1 FM and 900 AM, but beyond, if you're listening throughout the nation, throughout the world, it is WURD Radio, WURDradio.com. You're also watching us on our live stream, our robust WURD TV live stream on YouTube and also Facebook, youtube.com/onWURD, facebook.com/4WURD, and by WURD app as well. Joining us now, it's the first time we've had them together during a strategist panel or strategist segment. We're going to have an extended strategist segment. I want to talk about polling and the future of the polling industry. We have joining us our regular Reality Check WURD contributors, Stefan Hankin of Lincoln Park Strategies and also Trendency Research in Washington, D.C., and Justin Wallen. Justin Wallen is also joining us from California, from Southern California. That is, so we've got a little bit of East Coast, West Coast representation here on Reality Check today for our extended strategist segment. We're going to talk about polling. Go to lpstrategies.com for Stefan, J Wallen, JWALLIN.com for Justin. We finally get to talk to Justin. Justin, I'm going to let you go first because this is the first time we've talked to you since Election Day and since the outcome, since the results. So I want to get your first impressions about how polling performed, how the pollsters performed. There's been a lot of conversation, a lot of hand-wringing over discrepancies in the polling. So a lot of the big pollsters, particularly those who were aggregating a variety of polls and coming up with averages like 538, Real Clear Politics, and others, they were saying Joe Biden would win by 8-10 percentage points in some cases. That obviously didn't happen. What do you make of those discrepancies? Does that in any way showcase or spotlight or highlight a major problem with polling that has to be fixed or presents an existential threat to polling in the future?
Well, yes and no. So there are two different worlds of polling. There's public polling and private polling. And I think most of the world that Stefan and I live in is the world of private polling. But most of what people talk about is public polling. And there were a couple of things that are important to mention. There were a number of spaces where that public polling looked pretty doggone okay. And when we're looking at this stuff, it's always important to have the caveat that there's a way to read a poll, and then there's a way not to read a poll. And it's easy when you don't do this. You read a poll very capably, but a lot of times on TV, you'll see folks saying, well, there's a 2-point difference, so-and-so is up. It doesn't work that way. All you can take from that is it's very close. But we want to say there's a leader because that's interesting. That's what people That's not necessarily the truth. So part of it's just the interpretation. Clearly an 8 to 10 point spread for a presidential race on the popular vote, and we've got to match apples to apples. That's a fairly large discrepancy versus where it ended up. But what was forecast was what? That Trump would win or that Biden would win? And what was forecast is that Biden would win. So I'm a little bit more gentle to the public polling numbers that were out there. And yeah, there were some that were really out of whack.
Yeah.
And then there were some prognostications that got maybe a little bit, they're just smelling a little bit too much of their own exhaust, perhaps. But ultimately, we had a winner that was projected to be the winner. It ended up being a lot more close. I think we've talked a lot about this. I always thought it was going to be a lot more close than it ended up, than the numbers were saying.
Yeah.
Stefan and I have the value, and you may disagree, Stefan, but we have the value of seeing our own numbers separate from others. And you can see trends, and you can see the way people kind of are breaking, and you can pull, because we do more than just ask a horse race. We ask a variety of messages, and we start to see those deployed, and we see how effective they are moving certain blocks, and we start to see intensities with certain demographics and get a pretty good idea of how that's changing. In places like California, we have a voter file that's remarkably robust, and we're able to see what kind of people are sending back their votes early on, and that helps. And we're able to test in a slightly different way. We don't just test a binary usually. Do you think this way or this way? We'll kind of follow up with different degrees of intensities. And those ways of questioning allow people who may not be comfortable with their decision to vote for the decision. So they're right all the time. If we were right all the time, heck, we wouldn't be talking because we'd be living on a private island somewhere and the future, right? That's right. And it turns out it's hard.
It's not the crystal ball that it sometimes presents itself as. It can actually it's flawed. It's flawed. Let me have Stefan jump in here. Your impressions about like how that polling behaved, Stefan, for this election. Were you surprised by some of these gaps, some of these discrepancies that people are talking about? Your response to what Justin was saying.
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think there's anything Justin said that I disagree with. And there are a couple things going on, right? So certainly the national numbers overstated Biden's lead, right? I think the average on Real Clear Politics was about 8 points. Nationally, he ended up winning by 5. So I mean, that's not terrible, but obviously it was overstated, right? And then now, if we were going to go with the polling is broken, that would mean that we as an industry would have missed everything everywhere, right? But then in some states, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, Florida, pretty spot on, right? I mean, within a point or two, and it's really tough to argue that the polling was incorrect there. But then there were a couple states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio that just, now, Ohio, the polling had the winner right. They just had Trump winning by 1, not 8, like he actually did. So it's sort of these upper Northwest, Rust Belt states, polling did a really terrible job of trying to get that right. I mean, Pennsylvania, same kind of thing, way closer than the polling said it was going to be. So certainly, not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we did everything right. Clearly that's not the case, right? But it's also the universal, polling was terrible, I think is a little misplaced. Now, and I think, what Justin said, I think this is the key. I think if you looked at the data going into the election on Monday before the election, the most likely outcome was a close Biden win, right? Now, the way the votes came in and were being reported felt off from that, right? But where we ended up with Biden getting, 306 electoral votes, winning the popular vote by 5 million, it's a solid Biden win. And on the closer side, it certainly wasn't a blowout And I think, part of the hand wringing, at least on the Democratic side also, is regardless of what the data said, we wanted this to be a repudiation of Trump, right? Like we wanted him to get blown out of the water 1984 style, but it never, like, there was nothing in the data to say that was going to happen, right? Like you had to really be drinking the Kool-Aid to be like, oh, we're going to win in Florida, Texas, name your state. Like, it just wasn't really going to happen. And then, the other piece where the black eye is, I think, where polling missed it, right, is certainly in some of these Senate races. Maine, for example, was a big miss. All the public polling had Gideon way up. But then, a couple of these other ones, like North Carolina was always close. Colorado was pretty much spot on. Arizona was pretty much spot on. And, so again, like some misses, not, some less, some that were like spot on. So I think this is a little bit more case by case basis than a universal polling is terrible, never listen to polling again.
Yeah. You know what? Let's kind of backtrack here a little bit and talk about how important polling is to the political industry, to the campaigns and elections industry, to that public polling is also important in terms of just the overall national discourse during these big election cycles, or any election cycle for that matter. It is something that provides voters with some important insights and information. It's important for the campaigns. Justin and Stefan, I'd like you to sort of offer some analysis on this as well. Like, let's just talk about at the top, like, why is polling important? Why should people still rely on polling even after we've had, a couple of election cycles that have been problematic for polling? There's been a big conversation about it since 2016. So, Justin, I'll start with you.
Sure. So, one thing is that when we're starting out on these processes, not everything is so close. And we're fortunate in many cases from the very beginning that we see fairly large deltas or differences between one data point and another. And that allows us to make decisions from the beginning. Like, for example, should you bother running? I mean, is it worth expending that capital, whether it's political capital or real green capital? You can make an informed decision that's pretty accurate. I think when things get really, really dicey is when we're talking about those public polls that kind of in that 10-point delta space. That seems to have a kind of a consistent challenge in a lot of areas. But most of the time, when we're starting off with these things, we can see larger deltas, and we assess things in a variety of different ways. So, over the course of a strategic poll, we'll ask a lot of different questions, all of them not all of them in quite the same way. We'll kind of stack one concept against another. We'll ask ways. We'll ask open-ended questions so we can suss out that stuff that we don't really know. And the other thing is, we'll use different methodologies too. So, over years of experience, we realized that the same methodology doesn't work all the time, and people change. And our goal is to try to talk people in the way that ultimately they want to be spoken to. And so that means we don't always use the same thing for every audience. So you see a lot of polls out there that'll be email only, for example, or a lot of polls that are online only. And not knocking those, but you always have to ask and say, does that really matching up with the population that you're trying to talk to? Sometimes a hybrid is better because different people just respond differently. If you're going to do you very seldom see them these days, but if you're going to do an all landline poll, we're going to get a lot of older women who are single, who want to talk to you, and that's an important voting block, by the way, but it ain't everybody. If you're in California and you're doing it's not sorry to do everything in California, but it's such a work throughout the nation and also throughout the country, but it's just such a robust voter file, that sample. If you're there and you do an email only survey, well, right off the bat, you've eliminated 60% of the voters because we have an extraordinarily robust email file. It only counts 40%. So, first and foremost, we have the ability to use kind of multi-modes, kind of shift those depending upon the client and the region and the demographics of that region, and try and get it so we're more on the target of what people want to respond to. But those deltas tend to be a little bit larger in those private strategic polls than they do in the public ones. Sometimes they're very, very close. We were looking at the ballot measures this year in California, which a lot of tight ballot measures, a lot of ones were defeated. A lot of that looked pretty tight. But we're with that, we're given the information that says, okay, here are some spaces where we need to dig in a little bit further. And then it's an iterative effort where you start to peel away little bits of the population with very specific messages. And that's what and ultimately overall, those very, very close ones. It's not just one big silver bullet. You really have to get very careful with different demographics.
Stefan, why the difference between, or why the need to separate the public from the private polling? Sort of explain that, because some folks might be listening in and wondering why you have two sets of polls, why they're not, why those private polling results are not shared. I understand why that's not the case. I mean, there are a number of factors that that play into that, you know, and obviously, I mean, polling is an industry, it is a business. So, you know, you do need like that private polling business or model to take place in order to, you know, create a revenue stream. But explain that, like, why the separation? Why can't that private polling be shared as well, or why can't it be shared as frequently?
Sure. I mean, so it could be shared, but typically the campaigns don't want to share it, right? Because so they've spent money, and whether it's a campaign or, you know, an organization that's involved in politics or what have you, right? So, you know, they're spending the money to try to understand, you know, I'm oversimplifying this, but like, you know, so a poll is trying to figure out like, where are you right now? You know where you want to go, and then how do you, and then our job is to figure out how to get there, right? So now for a client that's doing this for internal purposes, you know, that's proprietary information. They've spent the money, they're trying to win an election. So handing that information over to your opponent is just bad. That's just a bad way to approach things, right? You know, so it's like, I mean, it's like if you're playing a game of chess and then you're telling your opponent exactly everything that you're thinking, is really not the way to go, right? Like, you're not going to be a very successful chess player if you're doing that. People might like you, but you're not going to win many games. So, you know, so those things stay private because it is that proprietary information. You don't want to show all your cards, to use an even a different metaphor. But, you know, so like, so those stay within the campaign. Sometimes they get leaked, but they're usually leaked for a purpose. You know, they're trying to show that a candidate has viability when maybe people thought that, you know, they weren't going to be able to win, or, you know, someone's feeling very salty in a campaign and wants to get someone in trouble or something like that. But, you know, anytime you see a private poll get released, be skeptical, right? Because it's being put out for a reason. Now, public polling, you know, so what media outlets are doing, or, you know, sometimes organizations just do polls to put it out to try to get some attention for themselves, is, you know, mainly that, right? They're trying to drive clicks. They're trying to get information out there that they want to share. And again, whether that's for, you know, playing up you know, an issue, and or just, you know, getting attention for your organization, like there's a reason for why they're doing it. Now, you know, taking a step even further back, I mean, I think where the importance of polling really comes in, you know, is from a societal standpoint, is like, look, you know, there is no way for our elected officials to talk to everyone, right? So actually polling, and I'm not talking about horse race polling here, but when it comes to like how people feel about issues, how they want the government to handle economic issues, social issues, things like that, like it's a very important thing for people to hear, right? Because if we don't have that, then what elected officials are going to hear are the loudest voices, and those are always the biggest supporters of the biggest opponents, and it wipes out about 90% of the American people. So, you know, polling, I would argue, has a very important part in our democracy, although we tend to get boiled down to horse race polling and, you know, who's up, who's down, where, you know, so much of polling is something that's very different, you know, whether it's for a campaign like Justin was talking about, or sort of in that broader context of getting information out there, you know, there's a lot more than just the horse race, although that's the only thing we tend to get judged on, or like most people tend to talk about, especially obviously in an election year.
Hey, Justin, who's the most responsive and who's the most non-responsive in these polls? So I know there's some chatter, you know, as folks are assessing the 2020 election, you know, they're kind of dissecting exactly what happened with the polling, and there's some conversations, some chatter about the undecideds. That maybe polling firms, maybe a lot of those big media outfits that were aggregating many of those public and some of those private polls as well didn't really factor in the undecideds like they should have. So do we see like there's like a cluster of folks who traditionally are very responsive when a pollster reaches out to them, and are there clusters of folks who are traditionally or typically non-responsive?
Well, a couple of things. I'll get to a specific point in a second, but sometimes uncertain people are just uncertain, and you have to respect that. There's going to be a chunk of people who make up their mind late, very. Sometimes it's the moment that they cast it.
Even in an election like this, because people, because a lot of folks who were publicly saying, they would be on like these mass media TV or mass media cable focus groups, and they were like, oh, I'm undecided, and they would get a lot of flack for that. I mean, they would get some static from me. I'm like, how could you be undecided in an election like this?
Yeah, and I mean, for us who work in this world of public policy, to some degree or another, you look at that and you think, you have to have been fully baked 3 years ago. But because intensities were so high in this election, it just reinforces that. But that's our bias that we're bringing to the table. And every human being has a different way of thinking, a different way of processing, a different way of evaluating. And the one thing I've learned, in spite of my own hubris, the one thing I've learned is what I think doesn't mean anything. But what other people think means, of course, everything. And if they're uncertain, and if are not able to sway, then we have to respect that and say that's just going to take more time. That's one reason why polls are done over a period of time, because people change their minds, they make up their minds, and we want to see how that changes. The other thing is we are often able to kind of suss out that a little bit more, like what I mentioned a little bit earlier about intensities and kind of digging into intensities. I'm not a big fan of well, I'll leave that to another thing. But you can through the use of certain words, you can make people feel a little bit more comfortable expressing themselves if they're not comfortable. Right. They're just uncertain. As opposed to what you asked was, is it tough to get to certain people? There are folks who say that Republican men are a little easier to reach and responsive by email. I think that could potentially have some good validity. Whether that particular data point is true or not, I think it just reflects to, as polling moves on, the likelihood of it being more and more of a mixed methodology to reach different people in the ways they want to respond makes a whole lot of sense. We had a lot of success, for example, in this past cycle with texting, which when in the last month of the election, there was so much political texting that it impacts that as well, right? People get exhausted from it. But my point being that expanding your method of reaching people is, I think, as professional researchers, we're going to kind of be ahead of the organizations that validate that, right? So statistical validity is actually defined by a particular organization. And so we're uncomfortable stepping out of that definition a lot. But if we approach this stuff with a nod towards allowing people to naturally respond the way they're most inclined to respond, we reach them in a lot of different ways, I think we're going to get better and better and better information, and that and then we'll yield more accurate results.
And Stefan, what is the best methodology, right? So there are several out there. I mean, there are, and we've heard a few of them in this conversation. There's, kind of the traditional calling folks on a phone. There's now reaching people by email, maybe asking people to volunteer or give some of their time through an online module. There's texting now. So there's a variety of ways. There's maybe, I don't know, in-person, on-site polling. Obviously, that's a lot more challenging and problematic for obvious reasons now in this pandemic environment. But what is the best methodology, or what is the most reliable methodology now to reach people?
It's all, unfortunately, the answer is all of the above, right? Which a lot of clients don't want to hear, because that means typically more money. But you have this mix of, America's a big melting pot, right? So, and if you want, and Justin mentioned this before, right? If you want older single white women, landline's the best way to go, right? If you're talking to younger Black voters, you're going to want to be on a cell phone, text, middle-aged, white, upper income, probably online is going to be your best bet to get folks. Now, obviously, they're not generalizing here, but, so if you want to get a good cross-section of the country, you got to do a little bit of everything, right? And I think most of us for national polls or, some of these statewide polls are doing this, we refer to as mixed modal, right? So we're doing some landlines, we're calling some cell phones, we're texting some surveys, we're doing some online, and we're putting it together.
Yeah.
And that allows us, A, to like meet people where they are, but B, also it allows us to look at the results through the different methodologies and start trying to figure out, like, are we seeing anything different based on how we're reaching people, and does that mean anything? And one of the bigger challenges that we have, and this is not just polling, but it's campaigns in general, right? Like the big question mark is always who is going to vote, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, everyone walks into a room and says, "Oh, I get this right every time. I know exactly who's going to vote because of my tried and true methodology that I've honed over the last 50 years," right? But like, we all say it because you're not going to walk in and be like, "Yeah, I have no idea. It's anyone's guess." But like, we have a decent idea, but we don't have an exact idea. And I think what we're going to probably find out, and we're not going to know this for a few months because it takes a while for voter files to get updated, but I think a lot of people voted in this election that we were not expected to vote, right? And then regardless of how good your methodology is, how good your questions are, if you're not talking to quote unquote the right people in your polls, the results are going to be off, right?
Got it.
So and don't hold me to these numbers, but like, the estimates right now in Michigan is they're going to be something close to like 700,000 people who voted this year who didn't vote in 2016 or 2018, but were registered to vote in both those years, right? And I think a lot of us looked at 2016 and 18 and we're like, okay, well, 2016 was like that Trump wave, right? Like a lot of new voters showed up for that.
And hold that thought, Stefan. Yeah, hold that thought. I'm going to put you both we just want to go into a break. I just realized I wasn't watching the clock. Excuse me, Troy.
No problem.
We've got Stefan Hankin of Lincoln Park Strategies and Justin Wallen of J. Wallen Research. We're having an extended strategist segment, a conversation on polling. I've got some other questions for you too. They are joining us by Skype, by the way, so you can watch them on WURD TV as well. So we're just going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with Stefan and Justin coming up here on Reality Check WURD.
Buying something from a dealer just sounds a bit, well, put it like this. My cousin Ray Ray got arrested for buying something from a dealer. So why would you want to buy your car from a dealer? Hi, everybody. This is Nick inviting you to buy your next car from Jerry over at Cardex. See, they're not dealers. They're like a car concierge service. They design a car around you. Almost any make. If it's not on the lot, they'll go out and get it for you. So use my car concierge, where I've already bought 4 cars. Cardex at 116 East Glenside Avenue in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Check them out online at cardexinc.com. Or call Cardex at 215-886-3230.
The WURD Radio Newsletter, keeping you informed, engaged, and connected. Sign up by visiting wordradio.com. Scroll to the bottom of the page and type your email address under Connect with Us. You'll receive the latest information on WURD Radio, messages from our president and CEO, Sarah Lomax-Reese, exclusive articles and multimedia content, and resources. Stay informed with the WURD Radio Newsletter. WURD Radio presents the following wellness tip to support our listeners with mindfulness and motivation as we continue to navigate the pandemic together.
Hi, this is Halana, your resident health and wellness coach, with tips to help you stay well. Many of us have heard this term before, but may not know what it really means. Compassionate living brings mindfulness and peace to the center of your daily life. Compassionate living can look like this. Number 1, be gentle with yourself and those around you. Number 2, choose to speak kindly to others, even when you're upset. Number 3, become a good listener and practice empathy at home and at work. We sometimes think in order to live with compassion, we have to become someone else. Not so. In fact, allowing peacefulness to be at the center of our daily interactions is something we can practice every day. Go ahead and try it today. Stay well with WURD. Happy living.
Stay well with WURD. Connect with us at wordradio.com. With Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, we're having an extended strategist segment. We're talking about polling today, the polling industry, how it works, and what happened during the 2020 election, doing a bit of post-mortem analysis on polling. Been a lot of concerns, a lot of people, a lot of accusations that polling did not work in 2020. But is that really the case? And since we're talking about polling, exactly like what is it? And so we welcome two of our contributors, Justin Wallen of J. Wallen Research and also Stefan Hankin of Lincoln Park Strategies. We have them on regularly for our strategist segment. They happen to be two prominent authorities in the business of polling. It just so happens that they're here. They have a relationship with us here on Reality Check. So it's fantastic to have them on, providing us with some useful insights here. Justin, when we talk about the polling industry and we talk about how we're polling and what's missed, that question about diversity comes up, or about inclusion of different non-white demographic groups. How do you poll Black voters? How do you poll Latino voters, Asian voters? Sometimes we'll come up with sort of the three classic demographics: white, Black, Latino, but then everyone else is under the category of other, and some people don't like that, particularly when we look at Arizona, for example. Arizona, indigenous or Native American voters played a very critical role in delivering that state to Joe Biden, but that's something that just wasn't accounted for in a lot of those polls months or in that year leading up to the election. How do we account for diversity in polls? How do polling firms do better at that? How have you all been adapting to this new diverse environment or landscape?
It's a fantastic question. I think it refers back to just a core tenet of good operations, and that is to always be questioning yourself and how you do your business. One thing that we always do is, before we start a project, we pick up the phone and we start talking to people in that region, whether it's the Secretary of State or the equivalent of Registrar of Voters, or some people that we know on the ground there. And our worlds tend to be a lot broader than just purely political. I mean, it'd be public policy, so we can just call and talk to people who are involved in the water industry or whatever it might be, and just start talking to them about what that environment looks like. Are people different? Are there different ethnicities? Are there different kind of subcontexts? Are there different themes that we don't know about? Picking up the phone, which is kind of, if you think about it, it's what we first were taught when we started selling whatever it was you're selling when you first got your career going, right? You got to figure out what's going on in that region. I don't think that's done as much as it should be. Then in terms of inclusiveness, a lot of times we have a lot in our sample files that we're able to identify as being directional, X amount of folks. And then we can always kind of look back at census. There's all sorts of little different totems. But one of the things that we do in our research is we don't look at a tag in a file as being concrete when it comes to race. We ask people what their race or ethnicity is, because in many cases it's kind of a choice, right? We live in America. People are a lot of different things. What was President Obama, right? You say white, are you Black, are you Asian, are you this? You have to give people options and allow people to respond the way they want to. And if you're in one of those particular regions and you've done your homework, you realize that just saying Asian doesn't work. If you're in an area that is highly Vietnamese and maybe some Cambodian in there, or you have Native Americans, maybe there's a mixture of Native Americans, there are different tribes. Is it San Manuel? You have to be aware of your environment and respect it, and allow people to respond, and make sure that you don't get below kind of a certain space. That's the hard part, and for me at any rate, because setting a hard standard, saying in the file there's X percentage of people who are this particular ethnicity, I always try and make sure that I don't put a cap on that, that if it naturally falls out higher, then maybe there's something going on there that I can't see in the sample that I start with. So I don't know if you call that art or guesswork, but at the beginning you have to be respectful of your environment and talk and try to figure out what it looks like for you.
Hey, how do you, and Stefan, go ahead and offer some insights here. We were watching very closely your tendency research and your tendency dashboard, and we would, from time to time, we would cite those numbers of that data here on this program on Reality Check WURD, and looking specifically, like our audience was real curious about, okay, well, what do Black voters think? How are Black voters, what are they thinking? How's the Black electorate thinking heading into election 2020? And that was very useful, that tendency dashboard. So talk about that. I mean, how do you improve diversity and inclusion in these polls, because there is a sense, and I have these conversations all the time, like with the family members or even people sometimes every now and then who call on this program, and they're like, no one called me, none of the pollsters called me. Like, I don't think they are calling black voters or brown voters. They're leaving us out of the conversation. Or I know for a number of years pollsters didn't have as expansive black or brown samples, respondent samples, as they needed that were reflective of the population. But how do you improve it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I mean, first, the callers who are saying that if your phone number is on the voter file, trust me, we are calling you. I swear we are calling you, but you need to pick up your phone. So this is, my plug for just...
Let me ask you real quick before you go on that. I mean, that's really hard to do because, I mean, I know folks, including myself, I mean, if it's, especially in this time, in this day and age, and, there's a lot of like weird, very invasive technologies that are being used by bad actors who are trying to get private data and information out of you. So people are not picking up 800 numbers or numbers they don't know. How do you cut through that though, right?
I mean, that is the biggest challenge of our industry, right? I mean, we've gone from, 40% of people participating in polls back in like, the 80s, and now we're at like 5% if we're lucky, right? So, and it's because of things like that. So, because, I mean, look, as much as I'm the billboard for pick up your phone, because it might be one of our surveys, but like if someone's calling me and I don't recognize the number, I let it go to voicemail. If it's important, you'll leave me a message or you'll shoot me a text. If not, I'm just going to ignore it, right? So, and we're, legitimate research, like, what I'm going to argue we do, what I know Justin does, unfortunately, we are dealing with all the spam that's out there, and that's making our jobs more difficult. Now, I would argue we're providing a public good quite often, and if we could get rid of all these people who have special deals from their whatever, I want to buy your house, I have this insurance policy, you're a long lost relative in Nigeria, although that's usually through email. But
some populations, some communities might be dealing with like bill collectors and things of that sort, especially in the pandemic. Yeah, and they're just like, I'm not picking up that phone, so
right.
Yeah.
So now, so what ultimately we run up against, with just about every client is there's the right way to do things and there's the best way to do it with the budget that we have, right? So whether it's a campaign, it's an organization, there's only so much money they can spend on research. And then we look at that budget and we say, okay, here's the number of people we want to talk to, here's how many questions we're going to ask. And then, that now we're looking at like, is it worth the extra money to talk to additional black voters? Because we know just saying black voters is a little ridiculous, because we know depending on your background, you're going to have very different views on this thing. Same thing with Hispanic voters, Asian voters, even white voters, but it's sort of, there are plenty of white people to talk to. There's more nuance within communities of color and the different backgrounds that come to the table. Now, so the way we would like to do this is very different than the way we ultimately end up doing it, because we just don't have the budget to do it, right? So what we end up looking at oftentimes is like, okay, also from a campaign perspective, it's like, what are we going to be able to do with that information? Is it worth spending money on? So if you're not hugely, you're not a presidential campaign, you're like a congressional campaign or a state Senate campaign, right? Like, you're not going to have the money to go do 10 different mailers to 6 different black communities with different messages, right? Like, you just don't, you're going to send out 2 mailers and maybe you'll have like a radio ad. So it's like, look, the information we're going to get if you're, descendant of slaves, descendant of people who came from the Caribbean, direct African descendants, what have you, we're not going to be able to develop messages that are going to get in those hands. So like, we're not going to spend the time and the money and the research to get that information, which, I'm not going to say is a great thing, but it's sort of the reality of the situation. I mean, I think and I don't know Justin's experience with this, but like the clients that we tend to do that level of research tend to be bigger corporations that have the budgets to do that kind of research, where it's like, look, we're going to talk to Puerto Rican Latinos. We're going to talk to people who are, or their descendants are from Mexico, other Central American countries. We're going to get down to like the cultural differences here so that we can match our advertising to those. Those kind of research projects tend to be with really deep-pocketed corporations because they have the money to do it, and they also have the ability to advertise in different ways.
Yeah, and Justin, I guess, it's kind of the future of the industry is going to be, and obviously there's that diversity and inclusion piece. We didn't get into, but I'd like to get into, but I know we only have several more minutes here. So I'm going to try to kind of fit these two questions in here. We didn't get into like who runs the polling firms, like the diversity of the polling industry itself. It's viewed largely as a predominantly white male dominated industry. So there's that. So how do we improve upon that? How do we is there an effort afoot in the polling industry to, I think here's two things that could possibly happen. One, having, more diverse, more Black, Latino, Asian practitioners in polling. That's one. And then two, collaborating more with organizations like, for example, Stefan, Lincoln Park Strategies, for a minute there, you teamed up with us, WURD, and we put out a national Black voter poll, which was extremely useful. That was at the top of the year. So maybe there's a need to do more of that so you can get that micro-targeting right of those different types of population groups. Maybe it's like, okay, hey, you know what? We can't get those phone lists. People aren't answering their phones. Maybe we don't have enough money to get to text people or to email them. But you know what? We can collaborate with different community or civic or media organizations specifically in those communities to help us reach those people we need to reach to get better response. Go ahead, Justin.
No, I mean, the need is clearly there. I mean, I'm hyper aware of what I look like. I'm by no means reflective of America's diverse fabric, right? I'm just not. I mean, I'm a mutt. I'm a lot of different things, but in terms of, I don't have those life experiences. I just don't. Now, a lot of people I work with do. And I think one of the things that's interesting about the polling industry in particular is it's one of those industries that has a lot of different people involved in it that you don't see. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is having that diversity be exposed in a visible way. So I, for example, do not own a call center, and that's the people who actually do the collection of the data. They do it under my guise and my operating procedures, and I have teams that are dedicated to me and all that kind of thing, and I use several different ones. But if you visit those centers, that's a very, very, very different situation. And you have people who are elevated and promoted based on ability, regardless of where they're from. I have a couple which I'm distinctly proud to be a part of because they have transformed their communities. They're actually from very specific communities. There's one in Toronto that I'm particularly thinking about, that you see this kind of promotion and adoption of inclusiveness and embracing of diversity. You see that on the working lines, the production of where this stuff actually happens. And this, it's not just taking phone calls and talking to people, which by the way is what it sounds like. It's easy to sound nice and kind and get people on the phone, but it's also data analysis, which is quite complex. It takes math skills. And then there's interaction with clients, so there's client management. There's a whole host of skills that are required. But at the end of the day, having a firm like mine that has, at the partner level, a diverse expression of America, I think is missing. It's certainly missing from my firm. I mean, I welcome the opportunity, and I'm not there. I don't have it.
Yeah, we actually we gotta go to break, unfortunately, and we have to end it there. It sounds like we're going to do a part 2 of this discussion because there's just a lot to cover. Both of you, this discussion is kind of giving me some ideas about how to carry out or carry on the strategist segment, and to talk about like different aspects of the political space. Politics is a business. Politics is obviously a necessary function of our democracy, but it's also a business. It's an industry. And we don't, and that's the reason why we have the strategist segment, but I've always wanted to expand on that and help the listeners understand the business of politics, the business of public affairs. And you two, really thank you for your time and joining us. And I know it's early morning for you. It's very early morning for you out there, Justin, on the West Coast. So appreciate you getting up early in the morning and joining us. Justin Wallen of J. Wallen Research. I'm going to give you the last word. Go to jwallen, WALLIN.com for more information there. And he joins us occasionally, anyway, frequently here on Reality Check for our strategist segment. And Stefan Hankin from Lincoln Park Strategies. Go to lpstrategies.com. Also trendancy.com for some great data insights. Justin, you're at Justin Wallen1 on Twitter, and Stefan Hankin is on Twitter as well at LP Strategies. So if you want to follow them there, see what they're up to. Thank you both for your time. Really appreciate this. It was a great conversation.
Great to be here.
All right, good. We'll talk to you again. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. We'll just go to open phone lines, and we'll be right back.
Listen to Laborers Live.
We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
The people that might have forgot how important unionism is in the country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, kind of work people more than 8 hours without overtime, kind of work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting a fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
In Pennsylvania, it's now illegal to sell tobacco products, including cigarettes, cigars, chewing tobacco, vapes, or electronic cigarettes to anyone under 21. Stores can get fined up to $1,000 for selling tobacco to someone who is underage. Know the law. Check IDs. Post your retailer license. Make sure only employees have access to tobacco products, and only sell tobacco products to customers aged 21 and older. Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, phone lines are open, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900. Just a reminder to folks, particularly when you're watching, you're watching us live on WURD TV and you're participating in the Facebook live comment section. Just be civil. There's nothing wrong with being disagreeable. Nothing wrong. I actually encourage people to disagree with any of the insights or analysis or perspectives or opinions you hear on a program like this or any other program on WURD. Totally recommend that. Highly encourage it. But just be civil. Be classy while you're doing it. I think that's just important. I have an immense amount of respect for WURD listeners, and I've spent many years in radio on both local platforms like this one that's also kind of going national and also big national platforms. And WURD listeners are by far the most intelligent audience that I've ever had the pleasure and the honor to deal with. But it's just a little bit disappointing sometimes. Sometimes I see, every now and then I see folks on there who are engaged in some not so classy and not so civil conversations. So it's disagree, but just be classy while you're about it. Try not to be offensive while you're doing that. I'm just saying, I shouldn't have to remind folks of that, but and especially when you call in too. Try not to engage in things like name calling. It's just not a very mature adult thing to do. We were just talking about the pandemic and people following public health guidelines. And we always have to lead by example, particularly for our young people. We talk about like the young people in a place like Philadelphia, especially during a time of high gun violence. And, we're always telling the young people what to do and how they should act. Well, we've got to lead by example. We really do, particularly when we're in the public eye or when we're engaged in public conversations, because like our young people, they're watching things like that. So just a quick reminder, I'm not going to air any specific examples, but sometimes I see certain comments, I'm like, really, y'all? Like, it's not necessary. But at the same, once again, definitely disagree and firmly disagree if you have to get your point across. But there's a polite, civil way to do that, a classy way to do that, and then it crosses over into the offensive way of doing that, and we want to discourage that. we want to encourage people to participate on all our platforms here on WURD. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Let me go to Prince out of Schuylkill calling it for a reality check. Prince, what's up?
Hey, man, how are you?
How are you doing? All right.
Yeah, an intellectual, articulate argument is way better than a nasty argument,
It is. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So I just want to share with you guys, because I want to know where it seems like everybody's speaking for black people, and everybody's trying to find what's best for black people. And say you make, I don't know, $80,000 hypothetically, and I made $250,000. So because my economics is much more than yours, then if I don't give you the right to speak for me, how do you speak for me? How do you include me in the, if you're not voting this way, then you're part of the problem? Or how do you include me in the, because you feel this way, you're not with us? Like, who declares who's black enough or not to do the advocating for us? And another thing I'd like to ask you is, these.
What is, and that's curious. I'm curious, Prince. Where does that stem from? Like, what is there like a specific example that you can cite that made you? I think it's a great question you're asking, but I just wonder where that comes from.
Well, it came from vote like your life depended on it. When some people who are voting, who can choose to vote or not vote, who make $250,000 or more a year, is being dealt the propaganda. But why? And then another thing I like to ask you is that most of the strategists get information like a lot of other people get information, and it's intrusive. I'm not saying all of it, I'm saying some of it. Because if you call me on my cell phone and I didn't give you my cell phone number, that's intrusive. And we should have the same right that we have with the credit companies to tell you not to do it again and to levy a fine against you if you do it again, because they could be just as malice or aggressive and repeat calls, because let's try them at 6 o'clock when they get home, or let's try them on the weekends. And so some of these strategists are strategizing for who? And I'm not saying that, I'm asking that question because if the majority of Caucasians that are running goes to a black firm, like the one that came in Philadelphia and didn't know too much about Philadelphia for Joe Biden, are we campaigning for white people, or are we campaigning to learn the database so we can run competent, qualified African Americans? And I usually hang up after that part, but I'm going to stay on the line because I want you to answer those questions, because those questions are relevant. Because how do we decipher between you intruding into my privacy or me wanting to participate in your survey?
Right. No, that's a very good question. I definitely, it's a question. I appreciate you asking it. It's a question I'll bring up on this program, and I'll bring up offline too when I have like sort of an after talk with with both Stefan and Justin and some others that are in the industry, because I've had a lot of concerns about exactly how folks report. I've been having concerns for years, and I've had arguments. I've had actual very tense exchanges with people in the polling industry over the years about how they sample folks. You're right. I mean, it can't. That's a good point. It can get intrusive. It can get invasive, because what distinguishes a polling firm, like with these two gentlemen, like the polling firms they run, what distinguishes them from a very aggressive telemarketer, or from a very aggressive debtor or creditor or credit company, right? Someone who's trying to go after you because they're trying to get you to pay your bills back, right? So, I mean, and that's an issue, obviously, that like vulnerable, economically distressed, low income, and even middle class people got to deal with, especially black people. So, like that's one. And so I think the future for their industry, and I kind of hinted at it in an earlier question, is, you folks are going to have to seek out partnerships. You're going to have to like look for community groups or community activists, community advocates, civic organizations who are trusted, who are credible in those communities, who you can partner with to help you carry out those polls or those surveys. So then you can talk to those actual people, and those people, they get basically some sort of, they feel that this is a poll or something they can participate in, because it's validated by that particular community institution or community entity. So, for example, if they want to go into a certain section of Philly to poll folks in either North Philly or South Philly, Southwest Philly, or whatever, then team up with, say, Prince. And, you know, Prince can find you a reliable or credible cluster of about 500 folks in the city of Philadelphia who are black, who can give you an accurate picture of how black people are living in Philadelphia and what are their actual or true concerns, rather than just randomly calling them on the phone. I think that's the future. I think that will be the future of polling. They have to put a little bit more effort into that.
Charles, they do that. They do that with the sororities and the fraternities. But my problem is that if you got the data, then how come the situations in those communities haven't changed? I don't want.
I mean, but are the sororities and the fraternities, are they all together like totally reliable or accurate?
Yeah.
Because I mean, those are primarily middle class. Those are primarily black middle class social groups. But then not all black middle class people. I'm not in a fraternity.
Right,
neither is anyone in my household. Like, those are very exclusive groups, right? You know, and neither are a lot of folks who are working class or low income black. Some people, they don't even know, you know, who those groups are. You know, they know about them and they see an occasional step show, but it's not, you know, so you understand what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, you have to be a little bit more expansive.
But what I'm saying is that those folks are hurting. Those folks were hurting, and those folks are hurting worse than or even more than poor people, because poor people got stimulus checks. Poor people already didn't have jobs, and they got government funding. And those people who had jobs, who lost jobs and lost business, are in the same boat. So what I'm saying is that don't treat us like they treat poor people coming into communities with free cheese and baskets of food. You know, treat us where when you get the data, things changes. Because if you still are getting the data, and then another community block grant comes into my community, and that's $6 million of union Caucasian workers in my community, then you've already got the data off of me, and you're building for my best interest, and yet I don't have a best interest.
I agree with that. I always have a problem with that. Yeah, thank you, Prince, for saying that. I agree with that. You know, there's all this. We are collecting more data as a human civilization than we've ever collected in the history of the world. Like, there's data for everything now. And we have easier ways to capture that data, but nothing's changing. So we've got more data than we've ever had in the history of the world on things like racism and how racism operates, and how systemic racism oppresses and kills populations. Like, we've got more data than we've ever had. We have a firm understanding of how this system of things like, for example, racism, or how poverty works, or how it impacts specific communities or specific neighborhoods, like block by block data, down to households, right? But nothing changes. It's like, what's the use of collecting all that data if, you know, Philadelphia, for example, collects all kinds of data on things that are happening in Philadelphia every day. You know, you got all these organizations collect the data, but nothing changes. In fact, the poverty, it accelerates, it gets worse. And so, you know, it becomes frustrating, like, to cite all the, and it's necessary data, it's necessary information and intelligence that we need, and then people can understand, okay, hey, listen, I'm not living through this on my own, but then there's no investment behind that. There's no investment in those objects or those targets of the data, the people who are being captured by that data. There's nothing helping them. So I agree with Prince on that. I think that's an interesting question that you raised earlier, Prince, when you first came on, where you're saying, well, like, how do we judge who's the authority on blackness? I guess that's sort of the gist of what you're asking. You know, I'll still stand by, you know, earlier statements that I've made all throughout the year. This was a life or death election. Even after it's done, and we have the outcome, I still believe that. It was a good versus evil election. Yes, people should have voted. And a lot of us did vote correctly, like our lives depended on it. And I don't see anything wrong with that. It was that kind of election. And I think that, you know, so there was that kind of big collective common good moment in ejecting Donald Trump from the White House. And I think that was important. I think that was important for the nation. I think that was important, yes, for us as a black community, but I also think that was important for us as a larger American community. It needed to be done. Now, did it work out perfectly? No, because we still have some issues as far as the House and the Senate and state legislatures as well. and there's a lot of work to do. So, you know, you've won. Now what? So the voting phase is done. The election, at least on the presidential level, was won. So now we have to get into the next step, which is the policy making and putting pressure on, you know, on the new administration, on the new political composition that we have, to make sure that they're making the right kinds of policy changes that we need as a community. So that's obviously an extended conversation, and that's going to go into next year and the year after that. But I do think that was always a necessary election, and I'm not too keen on entertaining conversations that that question that. I don't think there's any need to question that. I don't know why we would. Why? So it's done, and we needed to do it. So there's that. But anyway, but thanks for asking though, Prince. And you made some good points. All right, let me take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be having a discussion with the president of an HBCU, Talladega College, President Dr. Billy C. Hawkins. He's talking about Talladega College's safety plan, COVID-19 safety plan, which differentiates it from other HBCUs and from other colleges. Is something, you know, just to kind of get a snapshot of how colleges, particularly HBCUs, have been adapting to this pandemic environment. So let's take a break, and we'll be right back here on Reality Check WURD.
Just one more step. You got it.
You're doing great. This is the sound of a nationally ranked top rehabilitation hospital, home to the largest collection of robotics in the United States, where we continually exceed patient expectations, because no injury is too severe or too minor for our care.
There you go.
This is the sound of success. Moss Rehab. Challenge accepted.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time, Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight. This program is pre-recorded. No phone calls, please.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WURDradio.com.
Save the date. Friday, December 4th from 1 p.m. till 4 p.m. for the 5th annual WURD Empowerment Experience. And this year, the virtual and on-air event will be extra special as we celebrate the career of radio veteran Cody Anderson and discuss the importance of independent black media. For more details about the 2020 WURD Empowerment Experience or to RSVP, visit WURDradio.com and stay tuned to WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. This is WURD Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Black Talk Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We don't have Dr. Hawkins on just yet, so we'll just open up the phone lines at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, a recent analysis from ABC News, who had reached out to elections officials in 46 states and also the District of Columbia, which doesn't operate as a state, it's sort of a city-state hybrid. But each of those elections officials and those secretaries of state have not found evidence of significant fraud or irregularities that would have reshaped the presidential race. So there are no signs, no evidence whatsoever based on a 46 state plus one hybrid city-state district analysis by ABC News. They're finding no evidence of voter fraud at all. And these are what's remarkable or what's noteworthy of that sort of analysis, or ABC News checking in with each of those states, these are not all Democratic elections officials. This is a mix of both Democratic Party and Republican Party secretaries of state or elections administrators, and there have been about 4 states in that analysis who have not, or that have not responded: Indiana, Montana, New York, and Texas. They're the only 4 states that haven't responded for comment just yet. So that doesn't mean that they've actually seen signs of voter fraud. They just probably haven't gotten back to ABC News about that. But 46, basically 47 states saying, hey, we haven't seen any evidence of this, and so that takes the that takes the wind out of any like legal sales or any attempt on the part of, and in fact, there have been some changes to a recent federal lawsuit against the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania by Trump's legal team. They've had to sort of pare down or limit the extent of what they're suing about in the voter fraud case in Pennsylvania. So, people are not really expecting this or any of these cases to reach the Supreme Court, and if they do get to that level, doesn't appear to be a whole lot of appetite from the Supreme Court, at least based on some things that we're seeing, to litigate this. So we should expect certification by electors on December 14th. But to that conversation, real quick, when you get a chance, go to the B Note. That's a companion magazine, hybrid online magazine and newsletter for this show, Reality Check, WURD, THEBE Note.com. And you'll see the latest today's feature there. And the question is, will the Electoral College choose Trump? So we have our contributor, David Seaton. He asked that question, and he writes about it in the pages of the B Note. And if you've subscribed, you've already gotten that email. But it's an interesting analysis from David Seaton. He kind of game theories that out. Will the Electoral College choose Trump? So highly recommend folks read that if they have concerns about the Electoral College. THEBE Note.com. Let me go to Gary out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check. Gary?
How you doing, Charles?
Hey, what's happening? Good morning. Good afternoon.
Hey, yeah, good afternoon to you. I was listening to your conversation, and in particular one you were having with the brother Prince that calls in.
Right.
And, we collect a lot of data, which is so true. They collect so much data on our people, and just information in general, but I'm talking about our people now. We collect all this data, but nothing ever changes. We talk about the poverty, the racism, the police brutality. And let's talk about reparations for real, for real. We gave money. We give money every year to people in the Middle East, right? And our people built America, made America the country it is today, with all the technological advances and all the things that we've done that were hidden from us that we didn't even know that we did. They know all this information, but yet they keep their foot on our neck. And I don't understand how should I put this? It seems like some of our leadership, we're so accepting of this, and we're not standing up and demanding, which rightfully ours, Charles. They can keep taking all these polls all they want, the same information. We know this. Okay, what are you going to do to rectify this situation and give us some real fairness in this country? How do the drugs get in our community? How do the guns get in our community? Why do we make up the largest percentage in the prisons? Prisons are nothing more but an extension of slavery. They use prison labor to manufacture items for private industry. It's still slavery.
Yeah.
And and it's like, if you're going to be a so-called leader, in my opinion, and you're going to be representing my people, you need to stand out there and step up, speak up, and do whatever is necessary to change this situation. Because I'm tired of I'm not voting really for someone just because you're black. If you're going to do the right thing by my people, then hey, you're going to get my vote. I'm tired of us putting our vote behind people who sit back there living really comfortable, but the rest of the masses are suffering. I thank God every day that my wife and I were able to do the things we did for our sons and have a home. But guess what? There are a lot of people that don't have that. When I worked in Center City, I had so many homeless friends that I would talk to, and they would give me their stories. Man, I would thank God. I said, wow, all it took was that. Now they're homeless. And I would do whatever I could do for them. I wasn't, I'm not saying I could do a whole lot, but I tried to feed them. No, I tried. I did. And I had conversations. And guess what, Charles? Those people, some of those people I spoke with was so bright, it just blew my mind. I never took them for granted. And until we start holding people accountable, Charles, and I'm talking about these elected officials, who we pay their salaries, and they live well on our dime, they deal with corporate America, they get, the whole story is like, they get money from corporate America to pass legislation to benefit big business. These millionaires, billionaires hide their money offshore. We get taxed to death. Really, so. But, you know, I'm going to leave it here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for those thoughts. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you listening, and you know, definitely more food for thought for future conversation. Let me bring our guest on. We finally have him. Dr. Billy C. Hawkins is president of Talladega College. Go to talladega.edu. It is Alabama's oldest private, historically black liberal arts college. It was founded in 1867. Dr. Hawkins joining us here on Reality Check. Dr. Hawkins, how are you doing this afternoon?
Good morning. Yeah, good morning. As I was listening to the gentleman, I echo all those great comments that he was just making, and you know, powerful conversation there. Just kind of caught the tail end of it, but he's absolutely right.
Right. Thank you for that. Yeah, thanks for listening. Yeah, I'm sure he would appreciate that too. He's one of our regular listeners. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we got a lot of smart listeners here on Reality Check. And folks are listening in by WURDradio.com, not just in Philly, but beyond, throughout the nation, throughout the world, and also WURD TV as well. Dr. Hawkins, how have you all been handling this pandemic? You know, we've had a lot of conversation about how colleges and college students have been adapting to this pandemic environment. It's already been a very challenging landscape for HBCUs for quite some time, a very challenging financial situation, a very challenging situation over the course of history of HBCUs. How has it been during pandemic?
Well, you know, at Talladega, you know, going all the way back to March when the decision was made to send our students home, you know, we knew right away as we listened to the research out there, and that we were going to be in this for the long haul, and that so what I initially did is I formed what I call a COVID-19 committee on campus, and my nurse, VP for Student Affairs, and really met and looked at practices that was already being put in place out there. And then we started the process when our students left here late March, and then not knowing if we were going to return to school or not, and so we started the process. And so the funding that we received from Congress, you know, the CARES Act, we took full advantage of that. I spent nearly $1 million of that money of providing for safety, meaning that mask. You know, we probably have an inventory of probably over 9,000-10,000 masks on the campus. And so as we began to put our plan in place to get ready to receive our students back in August when they returned to campus, we felt that we had everything in place. And so when our students arrived on campus in August, the entire student body was tested, and we had a partnership with UAB in Birmingham, and provided. That's
University of Alabama, UAB.
University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Okay, got it.
And that was supported by the state. That all higher education institutions received funding assistance to test students, and that was only for those institutions who actually returned. Now we're one of 37 United Negro College Fund schools, and out of our 37 schools, 20 of the schools elected to return. The others went online, and so all of our student body was tested. All of our faculty and staff was tested at that point. That was the entry point.
Let me ask you, in terms of that decision, because you had a lot of schools, a plurality of schools similar to yours that decided to just go to remote instruction. And so why that decision to have your students return back to campus? I mean, I understand, you were just saying, hey, we did receive the federal money. We prepared, we tested everyone, but what was different about Talladega College from other HBCUs or from other colleges to prompt the decision to let your students return to campus like that in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, because we felt that the plan that we had put together after months of sitting down and putting this plan, from masks that we purchased shields. These are big plastic shields that would go in front of offices and desks in the dormitories as well. And so we had these big plastic shields, and we purchased from a company that would divide the room in half. We purchased hand sanitized stations from a company where so every building that you would go into on the campus, you had hand sanitizer. We had thermometers, and that we had temperature checks at every entry point on the campus. Every building on our campus had a team captain that temperature checked every student, every employee when they came into the administration buildings. That was every day, which was a part of our plan. We purchased the infrared cameras, where when you walk into a building, camera takes your temperature. If you don't have a mask on, that camera would tell you that you don't have a mask on, you better put a mask on. We actually, which was, again, a part of our plan. We had what I call as my COVID busters, that cliche of a Ghostbusters. My COVID busters, at nighttime, they wore these big tanks on their back, and these were some staff members that we paid extra to do this. They would go and sanitize every building on the campus, defogging every building, and that was a part of the routine. So I'm simply saying that with that major investment that we made, our students actually will finish on Thursday of this week. Actually, most of them have already gone, finishing final exams. Less than 1% positive.
Less than 1% positive. Out of how many? And just to give the audience, listeners, a sense of how many students are there on campus?
Okay, we got over 1,300 students enrolled here, faculty and staff. You're talking another 150 or so, and so when I share that number, we total of about 14 positives, and plus we had a quarantine house on campus. Of that 14, 4 of those were faculty and staff.
Okay.
That's in that number.
Has anyone succumbed on your campus? Has anyone died from COVID, or just everyone just got sick and then we're able to recover from it?
No, yes, I'm saying a total of 14. Okay. Out of that number, but only 10 of those were actually students. But we had a quarantine house on the campus.
Okay. So no one died. No one died at all. There was great.
No.
Okay.
So we made it through the semester without any major problems, but we believe because of the plan that we put in place was very, very effective, and it will be the same plan that we will follow going into second semester. I purchased over 6,000 rapid tests. Okay, and I did that around. I didn't go through, waiting for tests to come. There were some companies, FDA approved out there, where we could purchase the rapid test. So with our nurse on campus, no one could come in. We actually even played basketball with no audience this semester. We had some games, but the incoming team, they had to be tested upon their arrival here, and so nothing was for chance. Our new Student Activity Center that we just opened a few months ago on campus, beautiful facility, and but there's only one door in, and you got to be go through the check procedures. So we believe that the social distancing. Now, not to say that our students did everything we asked them to do. If some of them might be walking down on campus, mask below their chin because it became a part of their costume, but if they saw an adult, that thing would go up right away. And so they learned the behavior. They know that we had no tolerance because if they didn't wear it, then they were going home.
Let me ask you too, Dr. Hawkins, what's the attitude or the disposition of the students like going through a full semester like that returning to college with coronavirus looming out there, obviously having to worry about that. Then I'm sure that they had to hear about the cases. You had to be public about that. Yeah, I was looking at this UNCF survey. I think we actually had the authors of that survey, of that nationwide survey of HBCU students, come on this program sometime back, and they were saying that, HBCU students, as with all college students, are stressed out. They're stressed out about like whether or not to return to campus or college. They're stressed out about the public health threat, but also about the financial considerations. HBCU, black college students in general, have to deal with financial challenges more so than any other demographic group. So what's their state of mind, you think, right now after going through a semester of that?
Well, I'd say it's very good for us. I mean, we had another record enrollment. I've had a record enrollment for the last 3 years. So in the midst of this pandemic, our enrollment went from 1270 last year to 1313 this year, and we made it comfortable for our students. As an example, academically, if a professor had a class of 24, only half that class would come, say, on Monday. The other half would come on Wednesday, and then they would, and then the other half they would go online to take the course in their dormitories. We had some students elected not even to go into the classroom, and so that they could stay in their dormitory and go online every day and take their classes. They missed that social connection, as I've spoke with many of them, and then we, and we had some students, a small percentage that elected to just stay home for the semester and take their classes. But even those students, we know that they will return. In January when we start back up, and so it was a challenge for them with the technology, with the online, because it was different. And and many of them, they had their preference. They'd rather be in the classroom, but they understood this pandemic. So, of course, we have full-time counselors on the campus, several, and so we were prepared to deal with any stress that took place. Stayed in constant contact with our student leader groups, on the campus. I mean, we even held Miss Talladega coordination 2 weeks ago on Sunday afternoon, but it was outside, social distancing, and not a big audience, but my staff member did.
This is, and you know what, Dr. Hawkins, this is remarkable to hear because a lot of the intelligence that we're getting or news headlines from colleges is that a lot of students are getting sick. Staff are getting sick. Colleges have been forced or prompted to shut down. And in fact, there is an expectation that many colleges, I saw one study that suggested we could have anywhere from 30 to 40% of universities, of colleges of all sorts or all stripes, have to close doors, to shut down by the time this is all done. And to hear that you had this plan, I mean, that's interesting. And particularly from an HBCU, you wouldn't, the mainstream sort of assumption would be that an HBCU wouldn't be able to do something like that compared to, say, a predominantly white institution or better funded institution like a major Ivy League or elite state institution.
Well, I've had several of my colleagues, presidents at other institutions, who chose to go 100% online, planning to bring their students back in January. Came on campus, spent a whole day, and I gave them our plan. And I said that to all because I currently chair the 37 United Negro College Fund presidents and institutions. And, I've been a president now almost 19 years, and I tell my colleagues there is nothing that I'm doing here at Talladega. If it's working, you're more than welcome to it. And that's my philosophy because, hey, we're all in this together, and we should be about helping each other. And so that's my philosophy about it. I just thank God that our staff really led a great charge. I mean, my counselor, Mr. Brown, and my VP, Dr. Burgeon, they've just done a wonderful. I get tested so that you know, every week I've gotten tested.
Wow.
And my test goes in, is driven to Birmingham to the lab, and because we run tests to Birmingham, especially the nasal swab, and to Birmingham, and of course we got the rapid test that will tell you that there may or may not be a problem, and we get them tested. But I've not been afraid to be tested. I want to know, okay, this is a problem, and I think we brought that comfort to our students that it's okay. I mean, we have a marching band that is at 400 students now on this campus, and they've all been tested, okay, on a regular basis. All of our athletic teams are tested on a regular basis, and so we've not run from it in terms of the testing, and it's been high priority. But masks are mandatory. I tell you, mandatory. And,
that's good. That's good to hear. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing this, Dr. Hawkins, because I think it's important to hear. It's a good case study, a good example of how an institution of your sort should operate during a time like this, because we've been having like a lot of concerns and questions about just how society in general has not been following public health guidelines and partly the reason why we are where we are now as far as this pandemic is concerned. We've been talking to Talladega College's president, Dr. Billy C. Hawkins. For more information, go to talladega.edu to learn more about them, at Talladega College, or really at Talladega, COLLEG, on social media, on Twitter in particular. And it's it's Alabama's oldest or Alabama's first private historically black college university, or historically black liberal arts college, founded in 1867 there in Alabama. He's joining us by phone from Alabama. Dr. Hawkins, really appreciate your time. Please keep in touch with us. Let us know how you're doing.
We sure will. Thanks for having me on your program.
All right, thank you. All right, be safe down there. Good luck. Okay, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're scheduled to talk with Jamie Hodge, director of the Vera Institute's Reshaping Prosecution program. There were a number of progressive DA candidates who were elected this year. And so what does that mean in the future? What does that mean for the future of criminal justice reform and police reform and other issues? So we'll be bringing her on shortly here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word TV, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you have a K-12 student who does not have reliable internet at home? PHL Connected is here to provide eligible students with free high-speed internet to make sure they always stay connected to digital learning. Dial 211 and press 1 to ask questions and get connected today for free. The hotline is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so call anytime. That's 211 to get your student PHL connected today.
Hi, this is Jeff Brown from Brown's Family ShopRites and Fresh Grocers. Are you thinking about a part-time job to help out with the cost of the holidays? We have plenty of openings. You can apply online at shoprite.com/careers or freshgrocer.com/careers. Come join the Brown family today and help us serve the people of Philadelphia. Have a great holiday.
Livelihood, the new initiative from WURD Radio, connecting Philadelphians to jobs, entrepreneurship opportunities, small business resources, and financial literacy. Visit WURDworks.com right now and take the next step in your professional journey. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDradio.com.
Okay, welcome back to Reality Check here on 96.1 FM, 900 AM in Philly proper, Greater Philly, Delaware Valley, but beyond, throughout the nation, throughout the world. We are viewed on our live stream at WURD Radio, WURDradio.com, and also on WURD TV as well. Joining us now is Jami Hodge. She's director of the Vera Institute's Reshaping Prosecution program. She's also a former 12-year assistant United States attorney, former federal prosecutor. Joining us here. Go to vera.org for more information on what they're up to and what she's up to with the Reshaping Prosecution program. Jami joins us by Skype, so you can see her on WURD TV as well, live here on WURD. Jami, how are you doing? Thank you.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be with you again.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks for accepting the invitation. So we appreciate that and give us a little bit of your time this afternoon. You've been watching this closely. We've had you on before, and we've talked about this, about the need to dramatically reshape, reform the prosecutorial landscape, to look at prosecutors as less of that and more like district attorneys, more as change agents when it comes to issues like criminal justice and also policing as well. So very positive trend, and and we haven't talked about this until now because we've been so focused on the national, like presidential and congressional Senate dimensions of this recent election, but there were quite a few DA or district attorney candidates who claim themselves as progressives who were elected in major cities this year. Talk a little bit about that. Who would you want to spotlight? What are some of those races that are notable in this election cycle?
I mean, I think there are a couple that come to mind. The first is we have the largest local DA's office in the country, which is in LA, more than 1,000 staff in that office. And there was a race between George Gascon and the incumbent Jackie Lacey, who's been in that role for many years. George running on a progressive platform, and he won. So we now have the largest office in the country run by someone who ran on a platform of change, who instead of running on the traditional platform of conviction rates and long sentences, ran on a platform that recognizes that prosecutors need to work to end mass incarceration, that they have an obligation to address the racial disparities that we see in the system, and to be more transparent and accountable to the communities that they serve. Another couple races that I would point to are actually re-elections of both Kim Gardner in St. Louis City and Kim Foxx in Chicago. These are both Black women who have not only been leading the charge for change, but who've come under a lot of attack for the work that they do. But the fact that they didn't just have one term, that after running on a platform of change, having a chance to show their communities what a different approach can lead to, they were reelected. And the community has spoken clearly that this is a path that they want to pursue. So those are definitely some races that come to mind that say a lot about where this movement is headed.
Right. And so, like, where is that movement headed now? Like, what are we kind of seeing, or what are we expecting on the horizon? And it's a particularly tense and very volatile time for the nation, obviously, and there's a lot of issues to cover. There are a lot of issues to tackle, particularly for these DAs in these major cities where a lot of change is taking place, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. So those elected officials are going to have to adjust to that. In addition to a new administration in Washington, D.C. expected in January. The transition hasn't formally taken place, but that's going to present some problems. But I guess that's something to look forward to, is that new administration. But what do you think that big movement is? How is that movement? How is that movement going to manifest as we head into a new year?
There are so many things you just raised in that question. So I'm literally going to close the blinds for just a second.
Oh, no, that's okay.
So that
go ahead.
A little bit clearly.
Right.
All right. Thank you for bearing with me.
That's better.
Well, one thing I would point out is that this movement is still new, so we have more than, depending on the estimate, between 2,300 and 2,400 prosecutors' offices in this country. And so, this is still something that has just really started happening in the last 5 years, where we've seen prosecutors run on a platform that's so different than the traditional role. So one, I think the movement is still new, and there's still a whole lot of work to be done. But with respect to the fact that we are in this global pandemic, I mean, one of the things that we know is not only is this impacting, first of all, communities of colors worse, we're hospitalized at rates much higher than white people. We see the same dynamics play for those who are incarcerated. And so the rates of exposure are significantly higher for those who are incarcerated. The CDC guidelines that tell us what to do in terms of social distancing and, the fact that hand sanitizer is contraband in most facilities, so some of the basic things that we do on the outside to protect ourselves are just not available for those who are incarcerated. And I think the fact that mass incarceration generally is a problem has only been exacerbated by this global pandemic. So now, instead of folks being kept away from families, kept away from communities, often for things that are minor. We know so much of what comes into the system is driven by poverty, it's driven by substance use, it's driven by mental illness. Not only now are they just removed from their families, they are risking a death sentence on top of it. And so there's a lot that is for all of us to be paying attention to, but particularly for those who are stakeholders in the system, a lot of work that needs to be done to fix problems that are just exacerbated by our current climate.
You've put in place, you've created through your program something called an initiative called Motion for Justice. So talk a little bit about that and how you would, this is something that you're hoping will be able to help these elected DAs, prosecutors, address some of those issues that you just talked about. How would it go about doing that?
So I think one of the things that we've learned over the summer, particularly through the tragic killing of George Floyd, is how much the intersection of racial justice overlaps with criminal justice, that in fact they go hand in hand. They are inextricable. And so what Motion for Justice is about is how do we center racial equity in the efforts to transform the role of the prosecutor, again, because they have to go hand in hand. And so we're very excited about it. It was work we started way before this summer. So we had no idea at the time that we began this work, which we did in partnership with amazing advocates who have the lived experience, racial justice scholars, lead prosecutors who care deeply about these issues, that we had no idea we'd be in this moment where this, what we created would hopefully be so pertinent and useful. But what it is, it's a website, and the broader initiative is how we actually try to implement what's in the website. But on the website, motionforjustice.org, what you'll find is first that educational materials, because so many people don't understand how at the very root, literally, if you look at the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, there was a huge exception, which was except for punishment for crime. And how that at the very root, from the beginning of the abolishment of slavery, the criminal legal system was meant as a means to oppress and control the formerly enslaved, and that root has never changed. It's just broadened in its current operation of how it's used to oppress and control people of color today. And so understanding some of that history. Then secondly, we really have to rethink the values that are upheld in the system. So the truth and justice and fairness, community well-being, those things mean something different when you center racial equity. When you talk about concepts of safety, when you center racial equity, you're going to ask, it begs the question, safety for whom? Because police presence may mean safety for one community. It may not mean safety for another community. And then importantly, we have action steps. So there are 10 concrete steps that prosecutors can take, many of them in partnership with the communities that they serve, to enact change. And each of those action steps has a specific racial equity strategy, because there are lots of good things that are happening in the prosecution space, but if you don't center racial equity, those who benefit from them don't come from the communities who've been most harmed by the system.
Should we even, and Jami, should we even in the future, and I know language is everything, right? When we have these discussions and when we sort of move forward on tackling these issues, but should we even be defining or describing these positions as prosecutors anymore? You know, should we be coming up with new terms? You know, even the name prosecutor in and of itself, it connotates something rather ominous, something negative, something that takes us back to those days of the formerly enslaved having to deal with these new criminal legal systems that were created just to control them. So do we even go so far as to like fundamentally change or alter how we describe or how we illustrate what a DA does? Should they even be a prosecutor anymore?
I think that's a great question. I think it should fully be part of the conversation on the table. You know, language does matter. It's something we certainly talk about in the othering that we see in the system, this sort of good people versus bad people dynamic, which we know is a false dynamic. Catch any of us on the day of the week, and we may make a decision that puts us in either side of that. So language definitely matters. I think, though, in addition to language, because language might give people an easy way out, you know, so if all you did was change the name but not change the roles and responsibilities, then I think that, you know, I think it should be part of the conversation, but let's get at what those roles are and how you're using that power, and make sure that we are seeing it used in ways that results in different outcomes for the folks who are most harmed. But language certainly should be part of that conversation.
You know, something else too. One thing that we have been seeing happening in most of these major cities, you know, and a lot of it's been aggravated by pandemic and the economic situation. We have been seeing rises in violent crime. So, like in Philadelphia, I mean, we're over 400 homicides, and we're not even at the end of 2020 yet. So we've been breaking records. That we. You know, these are the type of homicides we were seeing back in the 90s. Other cities have been dealing with that too. So how do you balance that out? Like, where on one hand, like, you want to make sure that these disparities don't persist in the criminal legal system, that the criminal legal system isn't unfairly or disproportionately targeting black communities, for example. But on the other hand, I mean, those same black communities, they're also overtaxed, they're overstressed with public safety concerns, with high violence rates, high gun violence rates. And so how do you strike that balance? Because at some point, the DA or the prosecutor, they're also expected to keep those communities safe, to engage in strategies that can immediately alleviate or mitigate that violence.
Yeah, that is such an important question. I think there are a couple of things I want to say in response. First, we have to understand what those core drivers of violence are. And there's a lot of research behind this. But one of the core drivers of violence is the inability to meet one's economic needs. So when we are in a time where people are losing jobs, which we know we are in pretty much an economic depression right now as a result of COVID. So many folks, particularly folks who work in service industries, have lost jobs because of the need to close things down for safety reasons. That we have to think about, how do we address violence in ways that aren't just being reactive? We basically try to increase punishment and say, well, that's how we're going to just flood in police. We're going to, you know, be reactive to situations. We actually need to think about what are those drivers of violence and how do we tackle them on the front end? How do we resource people and communities with what they need so that they can meet their economic needs, that they do have things like housing and access to education, all of which we know are key factors in keeping folks from being involved in the criminal legal system, key factors in keeping folks involved in violence. And so really using this moment, particularly this moment where we're focused on the intersections of race in the system, to figure out what do we need to do to instead of pouring billions into an incarceration system, into a punitive approach that is reactive, into moving those resources to the front end. How do we resource communities so that violence isn't happening in the first place? So that's definitely something that,
you know what I also found fascinating. I think we ran out of time, actually. So we got to bring you back, Jamil. We've been talking with Jami Hodge, who is director, who's a former federal prosecutor herself, former 12-year assistant United States attorney, and now director of the Reshaping Prosecution Program at the Vera Institute. For more information, go to verainstitute.org. She's at Hodge _ Jamila, Jamila, on Twitter if you'd like to see what she's up to there. She's been joining us here on reality. Unfortunately, we ran out of time because I had so many other questions, so we got to bring you back real soon.
Absolutely.
It's an important conversation, but we got a lot just there in that short segment. But thanks so much, Jami. Appreciate your time.
Of course. Happy to come back anytime. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Be safe.
All right.
Thanks again.
You
All right.
too. Bye.
All right. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Did you know you can catch the flu and COVID-19 at the same time or even back to back? Don't risk catching the flu during the COVID-19 pandemic. The flu shot is a safe and effective way of reducing your chances of catching the flu or spreading it to others. And the flu shot helps protect you and your community from the worst effects of the flu. Don't say, I should have got my flu shot. Call your doctor or visit your pharmacist and get your flu shot today.
As a business owner, hiring and developing people from the community that your company serves is one of the best ways to show commitment to that community. Let WURD Radio help with Livelihood, our new initiative that connects Philadelphians with companies like yours. We'll feature your business, open employment opportunities, and resources to connect your company with talent and ensure that you reach your target demographic. To learn more about how Livelihood can help you build your team, visit wordworks.com. That's WURD Works.com. Livelihood is supported by the Nightland Fest's Local News Transformation Fund, Borealis Philanthropies Racial Equity and Journalism Fund, and the Solutions Journalism Network. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on WURD Radio and WURDRadio.com.
All right, welcome back. 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. Also an announcement out of Philadelphia City Council. They will hold their first ever public hearing on the administration's proposed contract for the police union. So this is the first ever public hearing on the mayor's proposal for a new labor contract with the police union. Remember, this is as a result of a bill that was introduced by Councilmember Catherine Gilmore Richardson, at-large councilmember in Philly, but she had introduced a bill that would require a public hearing before the mayor would begin a new contract negotiation with the Fraternal Order of Police. So this public hearing, this new element, is supposed to add transparency and accountability to that process. It involves the public, or it integrates the public voice into that process, into that labor contract process, particularly when we're talking about the police union. So this is going to happen tomorrow, Wednesday, November 18th. If you'd like to sign up for public comment, okay, here we go. This is a really important hearing, and this is the first of its kind. So if there are folks out there who have concerns, if they'd like to have their voice heard, they'd like to express themselves or offer some perspective, some important perspective that otherwise would have been missed, this is the time to do it tomorrow, Wednesday, November 18th, by 3 p.m. today. To sign up for public comment, call 215-686-0454 or email eliza.alford, Alford, that's ALFORD @phila.gov. So you got to do that by today at 3 p.m. if you'd like to participate in public comment. The hearing will be held virtually via Microsoft Teams, and it can be viewed at phlcouncil.com/watch. So go to phlcouncil.com to watch it. That is November 18th, tomorrow at 10 a.m. That's at 10 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, November 18th. It's a police reform public comment hearing. So if you want to participate and you want your voice heard on this very important topic, then sign up for and participate in public comment. 215-686-0454. Email eliza.alford, ALFORD @phila.gov by 3 p.m. today. Once again, that hearing taking place tomorrow, November 18th at 10 a.m. Let me go to the phone lines. Yusuf out of Oak Lane calling in for a reality check. Yusuf?
Yes.
Hey, what's happening?
Your guest was talking about how hand sanitizer is considered contraband in prisons.
Mm-hmm. That's funny, right?
Yeah. Now, when I was in the system myself, I was always sanitary conscious ever since like the 70s. When I was in a place called Dallas, when they started overcrowding in places in the 80s, when they first started double selling people, I used to walk around with a mask on, and the guards used to say it was that he's touched something wrong with him. And I told him, I said, you don't know what's coming. People keep stacking people on top of each other like this, and you got this global warming and the climate's changing. There's going to be a virus going to break loose, and y'all going to wish y'all had paid attention to what's going on. So after 5 years in there, they transferred me to Greater Ford. Now, Greater Ford was the largest prison in the state with over it was built for like 4,000. They had like about 10,000 people in it when I was there. And I grabbed a toilet brush one day. Toilet brushes and stuff like that are sent there for the residents to use. You know, one of the correctional officers issued me a misconduct for trying to sanitize my toilet with a toilet brush. I said, you got to be out your mind. You people are unsanitary. I said, one day you're going to resent the stuff that you're doing. You stacking people on top of each other. You don't want people to sanitize stuff.
Yeah.
When somebody is sanitary conscious, you want to persecute them. And now they're seeing it. And then the same people that said that I was touched because stuff I was doing, they're doing the same thing, walking around with masks. They're doing the same thing, social distance. And that's how I was. Get away from me. I don't know you. I don't want you breathing on me. I don't want you touching me. And now they're doing the same thing. So who's crazy now? That's all I got to say, Brother Ellison. Thank you.
All right, Brother Yusuf. Preaching this afternoon here on Raja, words of wisdom, for sure. No, you're absolutely right. Because, people used to call the wrong people, being, kind of overreacting on issues with respect to like hygiene. And so now look at where we are now. Let me go to George out of Center City calling for a reality check. George?
And fine, Charles. How are you?
All right. What's happening?
A couple things real quick. First of all, they're lucky it's on Zoom. That means nothing to get done. They already pre-planned what they're going to say, questions they're going to ask. Everybody's going to put on a show. Remember now, this here opens up the floodgates that if you look at the FOP's contract or what are they getting, that means that you have to look at 33, 47, and everybody else's contracts. So therefore, the lawyers are already going to hit the city with that. So it's going to be an ugly situation. That's why I always say be careful what you ask for. You'll get it. And all this here, you ever notice how hard it is to get through Zoom? It's like that because it's designed like that, purposely and intentionally. And for our beloved caller, Gary.
You said it's hard to get into Zoom? I don't find it hard. I mean, well, it depends on... it depends on the technology. I mean, folks are going to have, we're going to have to figure out ways to work that out. We're going to have to. I mean, it's just the technology. I'm not saying that that's not a problem. I'm just saying, George, like this is where like communities like in Philadelphia are going to have to organize in such a fashion so that people who are part of that digital divide can participate in moments like these. So I do agree with you that they do sometimes design things to be inaccessible. So we got to figure out ways to organize in such a way. And there is a way to do that. There is a way to do that, I believe. It's like, so all these community groups and civic organizations, the thousands of them that are in Philadelphia and are not doing that kind of work, I'm like, why are y'all operating? Like that's part of your purpose or mission. Come on now.
Can I get a minute in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mean, what you're saying sounds real good, but listening to your basic listening audience is what's the age? Most of them are not super computer literate. Okay, with Zoom and all that.
So that's where the community organizations come in. Like
Charles, the community organizations don't get paid to do that. Okay, their money is not for that.
Well, then stop acting like they representing the people.
Charles, why do you keep living in the
either you representing the people or you're not. But
Charles,
anyway, go ahead, George.
Why do you live in a fantasy world of what they should do and what they do?
It's not a fantasy world. It's just this is what people saying they're supposed to be doing. Everybody, is like, hey,
what they're supposed to do and
they
what
the blackest ever, and they representing their black community, and so okay, well then represent.
That. Charles, why do you keep fooling? You ain't fooling yourself because you know better, and I don't even know why you say the things that you say, and you
because
know
I
better.
think that's like because I'm trying to achieve a world where we're operating in a better manner than this. Because I don't think it's anything wrong, George, with me being frustrated about that. I'm genuinely concerned about. I am sick. But George, listen, I'm so sick and tired of how things operate in Philadelphia. It's the same damn thing. Let me watch myself because I'm about to actually lay out an unfamily friendly word here. It's got to change. It really, I've been seeing this stuff manifest and just eat away at Philadelphia since I was since I can remember, since I was yay small. It's got to stop.
Charles,
there's got to be a way out of it.
Charles, can I finish?
Got to operate differently. Go ahead, man.
Can I finish? I mean, you eating up my time on
Okay, go ahead, bro.
But Charles, you know that they put things the way it's convenient for them, not you, for them. Yeah. And you keep arguing. You are one of the few hosts that have a chance to change things, but you won't. For whatever reason, you refuse to put the pressure on.
How do I refuse to change? This is my, hey, listen, George, this is my lane. So I don't want to overstep into other people's lanes, particularly if I don't specialize in a particular field. I mean, I'll be the first to admit, activism or going out there on the streets and protesting, that's not my lane. And I'm comfortable with that. I've got a huge projection platform right here with this radio program to talk about the issues and to share information as best I can and to do other things that I do that people don't see me do. I don't have to wear it on my sleeve all the time. So I mean, I'm just going to push back against that a little bit, like that I'm deciding not to engage in that change. I mean, I'm doing the best that I can or what's at my disposal. I can't do it alone, and I'm staying in my lane. I'm respecting other people's lanes. Other people, they got to do the work too. They can't be out here representing that they all for the people and they're not doing this work. Go ahead.
We can sing together, but we can't talk together. I mean, you won't let me get it in to finish what I'm saying.
I am.
Your opinion is very important, but I mean, I only got a short window to put what I got to put in, and I'm saying this here. All what you're saying is good, but believe me, it's not realistically, it ain't that way. Don't work that way. The slower they keep you, the less you know, the better for them. Now, the only way that you really put them in their place and check them is when you call their name out or bring them on your show and hit them with them questions. Other than that, man, they don't care what you say and care less. Especially council, they're the most disrespectful ones it is. You know why? If you go too far, they'll tell you, listen, we're a big sponsor here and we spend money, okay? So either you slow your roll or we're going to go talk to management. And they'll do it. They don't care. But realistically, the only one can do that is the president of council. You don't think that they will go to the president of council and say, listen, man, I don't like the way they're dogging me out on that radio. Do something about it. And then he'll call whoever and they'll say, well, Charles, you can't be doing that. They spent a lot of money with us. But I'm not even worried about that.
I haven't had a situation like that happen, and since time immemorial in Philadelphia, everybody's been calling and cussing everybody out in Philadelphia. It's still stuff is still not changed. So I mean, obviously, that way of operating it doesn't work. There's got to be a different way of going about this. People just need to do the jobs that they claim or the missions that they claim they represent or that they're doing. People are not doing that. And what happens is the citizens of Philadelphia, especially the people who are living in the roughest conditions, are getting hustled. And I'm tired of it. Or people are sitting up here and complaining and whining every day about how bad Philadelphia is, but, not coming up with any plans or ideas and not following through. I mean, it's as simple as that. Because as long as I can remember as a kid, people cussing everybody out, calling elected officials, calling people in City Hall out, calling the mayor out, calling apparently that's not working. It doesn't work. So maybe we need to come up with a different way of doing things. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off, George. It's just yeah, I'm a little bit pissed off because I'm like, come on, let's do things differently here and let's come up with a plan, y'all. Come up with some plans. A better way of doing things. Anyway, The Source with Andrea Lawful Sanders is coming up next here on WURD 96.1 FM 900 AM. So continue to stay tuned in to WURD. to listen to that next one. Thanks for Wilmore on the board still. I appreciate you, George. I really do. So thanks for calling in. Thanks. Really appreciate because you add a lot of food for thought. And everyone else for calling in as well and participating on Facebook Live and elsewhere. I'm at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Also, continue to go to the bnote.com. Philly, listen, and elsewhere, please stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly,